Chapter 1457, Hong Luan, 3. I know, but I really need an ally. I don't want to stay here anymore. I don't want to be someone else's toy. The woman had tears in her eyes. If it were any man, they would have shown her a pitiful expression. However, it was a pity that she was facing Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue would naturally not show her any pity. I can understand your feelings, but with just the two of us weak women, how can we leave this place? Lung Ruoxue sighed softly and said helplessly, My fiancé is locked up in the city lord's mansion's prison by Liao Yang. He has the strength of a monarch god, so as long as you help me save him, he will definitely be able to take us out of Plentiful City. The woman hurriedly said, Are you kidding me? Even as a divine lord, he was locked up in a cell and unable to escape. If he were to bring along a few women who are holding him back, are you sure he would be able to escape? Lung Ruoxue asked in disbelief. Liao Yang is the young master of Plentiful City. He is a very lecherous man and likes beautiful women the most. Once, he met me on the street and sent people to capture me and bring me into the city lord mansion. My fiancé fell into the trap because he wanted to save me. The woman said with a sad expression, I'm sorry. I can't help you. After hearing the woman's explanation, Lung Ruoxue still refused. This was because there was no way she would believe this woman's words. If I tell you who we are, will you be willing to help me? The woman hesitated for a moment before she raised her head and stared at Lung Ruoxue. I don't know. It depends on whether your identity can move me. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Yes. The woman nodded and slowly said, Actually, my fiancé and I are not humans. My name is Hong Luan, a plant-type red iris flower. My fiancé is a green wolf that is good at burrowing underground. We originally lived in the forest without any worries. If it wasn't for the perfect wedding for me, we wouldn't have left the forest and come to the human world. However, we didn't expect to bring ourselves such an unexpected disaster. You're Hua. After hearing Hong Luan's words, Lung Ruoxue asked in surprise. She couldn't tell at all that this beautiful and elegant lady in front of her wasn't a human. However, she seemed to have seen a pair of love between a plant and an animal-type beast before. They were her parents, but their ending wasn't satisfactory. Yes. Hong Yuan nodded. In order to gain Lung Ruoxue's trust, she had even transformed back into her original form. Looking at the huge red-colored violet milvus bloom in front of her, Lung Ruoxue completely believed Hong Luan's words. However, it was one thing for her to not discover the woman's true identity, but why did Qingju not discover it as well? This made her a little confused. Sister. The innate ability of the Violet Meteorite clan is to hide their own attributes, because the Violet Meteorite is not an extremely powerful plant-type beast, but their pollen can cause people to hallucinate, and is the main material for making hallucinatory pills. In order to protect themselves, they usually use their innate ability to hide their plant characteristics. This way, even a supreme god will not be able to detect it, and will only think that they are human. Sensing Lung Ruoxue's thoughts, Qingju hurriedly explained. Oh! Lung Ruoxue nodded her head slightly. At this moment, Hong Luan had transformed back into her human form. Can you help me? Hong Luan asked expectantly. I'm only a mid-level deity, do you think I can help you? Lung Ruoxue asked instead of answering. Yes, Liao Yang is very perverted. As long as you are willing to sacrifice your body, we will definitely succeed. Hong Ling couldn't help but remind him. After hearing Hong Luan's words, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines. She had always thought that beasts were pure, and plant-type beasts were as pure as a piece of white paper. However, this little flower in front of her actually incited her to sacrifice her body. What was this? You have a pretty face too, why don't you sacrifice yourself? Lung Ruoxue could not help but ask. I can't do it alone, I need someone to cooperate. What I mean is, you think of a way to seduce him, and then ill-drug him. Well, cooperate from the inside and rescue Brother Qing, and then let Brother Qing take us out of here. What do you think? Hong Ling asked expectantly. Not much? Lung Ruoxue looked at Hong Luan, who was as pure as water, and could not help but sigh in her heart. That young master of Plentiful City was really nothing. She had actually forced a little flower into a poisonous flower that was the most vicious of all. What's not good? You can tell us and we'll change it. Hong Luan hurriedly said. After all, it wasn't easy to find an ally here, so she really didn't want to lose Leng Ruoxue, a rare ally. I want to know, what kind of drug do you want to drug the young city lord? Leng Ruoxue asked curiously. Actually, it's not really medicine. It's my pollen. It can make him hallucinate and think that he has an intimate relationship with us. However, Liao Yang is a person who likes the new and abandons the old. He has come to find me several times, and I have naturally drugged him several times. Therefore, he has lost interest in me, but I have never been able to get him. Hong Ling said with some regret. Why did you not succeed? The effect is too short? Leng Ruoxue asked again. No. There are many people protecting Liao Yang, so even if I steal his token, it will be difficult for me to leave the room. Once he wakes up, I won't be able to take his token to the prison to rescue Brother Qing, so I need someone to cooperate with me. Hong Luan explained. What you mean is I seduced the young city lord in the room, stole his token, and then you took the token to the prison to save people? Leng Ruoxue confirmed. Yes, we need someone to cooperate with us. We have to do it at the same time. We can't be discovered. Hong Ling reminded. It's not that I can't cooperate with you, but what if you run away after saving them and leave me here? Leng Ruoxue asked, pretending to be worried. I want to. We beastie always keep our word, we won't be as untrustworthy as humans. Hong Yuan promised with a huff. Chapter 1458, Hong Luan 4. All right then. I'll believe you this once. If you dare to go back on your word, I'll set fire to all the violet milvus bloom in the divine realm. Leng Ruoxue warned. I won't leave you behind, trust me. Hong Ling helplessly promised. Following that, Hong Ling introduced Leng Ruoxue to Liao Yang's nature and some of his habits before leaving Leng Ruoxue and the others' residence with a relaxed expression. After Hong Luan left, Grape asked worriedly, Miss, is that Hong Luan reliable? Previously, she had been standing guard outside Leng Ruoxue's door, so the conversation between Leng Ruoxue and Hong Ling could not be hidden from her. However, she did not really trust Hong Ling. What does it matter if he's reliable? Even if we don't rely on her and that green wolf, we can still leave this place in a few days. However, before we leave, I have to leave a big gift for the city lord of Plentiful City, right? I'm not someone who can be snatched away by just anyone. Leng Ruoxue laughed coldly. That's true. Grape nodded. She knew that the we can leave this place young miss was referring to was the little guy. After a few days, that little guy should be able to wake up. At that time, if they wanted to leave, no one would be able to stop them. At the same time, in the courtyard of a gorgeous courtyard in the city lord's mansion, a handsome young man sat. The man was dressed in white and looked like an immortal. However, the slightly gloomy eyes on his face destroyed his overall temperament, causing the original otherworldly temperament to be covered with a layer of dust. Young master, this subordinate has already arranged for that woman to stay in the peony garden. The leader of the guards who had brought Leng Ruoxue to the city lord's residence was reporting to her with a respectful expression. Did she cry? Liao Yang asked curiously. No, I didn't. That woman was very calm from the beginning to the end. The leader of the guards said after some thought. Really? Liao Yang laughed and said in disbelief. It seemed that Leng Ruoxue was a special woman. Yes. The leader of the guards nodded. How is she compared to the women in the peony garden? Liao Yang asked again. He had spent a lot of effort to find the women in the peony garden from the divine world. The beauties in the peony garden were all extremely beautiful and could cause the downfall of a country. Therefore he was quite proud. Compared to her, the women in the peony garden are like dust on the ground and the clouds in the sky. There's no way to compare. You'll know when you see him, young master. The leader of the guards lowered his head and said. He had seen many beautiful women following the young master, but it was the first time he had seen someone as beautiful as Leng Ruoxue, who was so soul-stirring and soul-stirring. Oh! From what you've said, I really have to go and see her. Liao Yang's curiosity was piqued. However, he, who boasted that he understood women very well, would not go to see Leng Ruoxue immediately. After all, the beauties he had snatched would all have a temper, so he would have to wait for a few days. Keep an eye on the movements of the peony garden at all times and inform me if anything happens. Liao Yang thought for a while and then ordered. Yes. The leader of the guards replied, then turned and left. In the next few days, the guard leader would report every detail to Liao Yang, including who Leng Ruoxue had met. During his detailed report, Liao Yang, who had always wanted to ignore Leng Ruoxue for a few days, could no longer suppress his anxiety. He urged him to meet Leng Ruoxue as quickly as possible. In the peony garden, in Leng Ruoxue's courtyard. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue took out her own reclining chair and was lying comfortably on it. From time to time, Grape would feed her a fruit. Miss, it's been a few days, why hasn't the young master shown himself yet? Grape asked in a low voice, puzzled. In the past few days, there had been women who came to provoke her, but they were all rejected by the young lady. Liao Yang, who should have appeared a long time ago, had not appeared, which made her feel a little strange. He's waiting. Leng Ruoxue said. Wait, what was he waiting for? This is his home, what's there to wait for? Didn't he already snatch the young miss? Grape said in disdain. He's waiting for the right opportunity to appear by my side as a protector. In this way, I'll naturally be grateful to him. This is the most common way for men to conquer women. Although it's a bit old-fashioned, it's very effective for some women. However, he's destined to be disappointed in me. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Chapter 1459. The Guest Elder of the City Lord's Mansion. 1. Leng Ruoxue was right. Liao Yang was indeed waiting. He was waiting for Leng Ruoxue to be like the other women and come crying to him after being bullied. However, after ignoring Leng Ruoxue for a few days, he was surprised to find out that Leng Ruoxue didn't do what he wanted her to do. This made him feel defeated, but it also proved that Leng Ruoxue was different from the rest. At the same time, it also aroused his strong desire to conquer her. After receiving the leader's daily report, Liao Yang had been thinking about how to appear in front of Leng Ruoxue without being too abrupt. After all, Leng Ruoxue was a special woman, and usually, one could not play their cards according to the rules when dealing with this kind of woman. All the tricks that he had used in the past seemed to be useless in front of Leng Ruoxue. However, he, who had always been successful when it came to women, could not think of a better way to get close to Leng Ruoxue. This made him quite conflicted. Therefore, after thinking about it for 2 days, he decided to attack directly. After thinking about it, he headed to the peony garden without any hurry. After entering the peony garden, he went straight to the courtyard where Leng Ruoxue lived. After observing through the courtyard door for a while, he pushed the door open and walked in. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue was still lying on the deck chair, basking in the sun. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she did not get up. Instead, Grape turned her head to look, but she quickly turned her head away. Liao Yang, who felt ignored by Hong Guogua, suddenly felt depressed when he saw the master and servant's behavior. He was a handsome and rich man, and there were as many women who liked him as there were carps in the river. Why was it that in the eyes of this master and servant, he was as small as dust? He really couldn't understand it. However, being thick-skinned was the true nature of a man. After adjusting himself, Liao Yang walked to Leng Ruoxue and said softly, "Has young Miss Ling gotten used to living here these days?" As he spoke, Liao Yang also raised his gloomy eyes and sized Leng Ruoxue up. With a single glance, he was even more shocked. This woman was really too beautiful. Especially when she was lazily lying there at this time, that lazy cat-like appearance made people couldn't help but want to protect her. Although he had seen many beautiful women, but compared to the woman in front of him, they all became ordinary. He tried his best to hide his inner desire and his heart that was beating like a deer in his arms. He took another step forward and asked again, "Has young Miss Ling gotten used to living here these days?" Who knew that even after he asked twice, Leng Ruoxue didn't answer him. She didn't even look at him in the eye. This made him feel depressed. Could it be that his charm had decreased? He couldn't help but let his thoughts run wild. Who are you? Lung Ruoxue was extremely annoyed. She knew that if she ignored him, this man would not leave. The young master of plentiful city, Liao Yang. When Liao Yang saw that Lung Ruoxue was finally looking at him, he finally regained some confidence. He didn't know that Lung Ruoxue just wanted to get rid of him quickly and didn't intend to talk to him at all. I've long heard of your great name, Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Then she lifted her eyes and glanced at Liao Yang, who was standing not far away. This Liao Yang had good looks, but it was a pity that he was a man who didn't mean what he said. Furthermore, he had deceived many women with his looks. Of course, this was what Luan had told her. Is Miss Lung angry with me? I had no choice but to invite you here in such a way. Liao Yang could hear the displeasure in Lung Ruoxue's words, so he explained with a faint smile. Why should I be angry with someone who doesn't matter? Lung Ruoxue replied indifferently, yes. She wasn't angry, because there was nothing to be angry about. To her, Liao Yang was just a passerby. Who would bother with a passerby? To Miss Lung, I may be an insignificant person now, but I won't be one very soon. Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Liao Yang replied in a calm manner. There was even a trace of a proud smile on his handsome face. He liked women with such character. After seeing so many women who would submit to adversity, he suddenly felt that Lung Ruoxue's style had a different flavor. This could also stimulate his intense desire to challenge. Are you sure? Lung Ruoxue's face was filled with disbelief. Wasn't this man a little too confident? She really didn't know where this guy got his confidence from. Of course. I've already told father that I'm willing to take you as my equal wife. Liao Yang said confidently. He believed that no woman could resist such temptation. Equal wife? I don't care. My man can only have me as his woman. Lung Ruoxue laughed. How is this possible? With my status, I can't just have one woman. Liao Yang said in disbelief. He never thought that Lung Ruoxue would be so ambitious. She wanted to be his only woman. How could that be possible? Not to mention whether his city lord father would agree or not. Even he couldn't possibly live with only one woman for the rest of his life. Actually, he was just thinking too much because Lung Ruoxue had never said that she wanted to be his only woman. However, Liao Yang, who had always felt good about himself, naturally didn't notice the hidden meaning in Lung Ruoxue's words. Since we don't agree, then there's nothing to talk about. Master Liao, please go. Lung Ruoxue asked him to leave. Feeling Lung Ruoxue's cold attitude, Liao Yang felt that he had lost face. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered that this was his home. Why should she ask him to leave? Miss Lung, don't you forget that this is my home? Liao Yang reminded him angrily. He had never been so embarrassed by a woman before. Yet, towards this Lung Ruoxue, he couldn't bear to hit her, and even more so, couldn't bear to scold her. Therefore, he could only sulk alone. So what? I'm the one living here now, so I'm the one who calls the shots. Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly. Miss Lung, please consider my words carefully. Give me an answer after you've considered it. Liao Yang suppressed the anger in his heart and turned to leave. However, he was stopped by Lung Ruoxue after he took 2 steps. Wait, young Master Liao, I don't need to think about it. I still have the same words, my man can only have me as his woman. Lung Ruoxue said to Liao Yang's back. When she said this, she could even feel Liao Yang's shoulders trembling. Chapter 1460, The Guest Elder of the City Lord's Mansion, 2. When Liao Yang heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he walked out of the courtyard without even turning his head. Miss, he's leaving just like that? Grape looked at Liao Yang's back and said in disbelief. She did not expect Liao Yang to give up so easily. This made her a little disappointed in him. After all, she had high hopes for the young master who had used extreme means to invite them to the city lord's mansion. What, are you disappointed? These few days, Grape and Lotus Seed had been so eager to watch a good show that they were about to go crazy. However, Liao Yang was not someone who would give up so easily. However, he did not expect her to be so stubborn. He must have gone back to think of a solution. A little. Grape told the truth, his face still full of regret. Don't worry. He'll come again. He's determined to get me. Lung Ruoshua said. Oh, that's good. Otherwise, there won't be a good show to watch. Grape said with relief. Miss, Hong Luan is here. At this moment, Lotus Seed's voice was heard by both of them. Following that, Lung Ruoshua saw a fiery red figure rushing to her side. How is it? What did Liao Yang say? Hong Yuan asked impatiently. He said I can be his equal wife, but I told him that my man can only have one woman. Lung Ruoshua said calmly. Is this considered a rejection? What's wrong? Hong Yuan was stunned and asked. She did not really understand the language games of humans. However, she could tell from Lung Ruoxua's words that she did not seem to agree. Yes. Lung Ruoxua nodded. How could you reject him? Have you forgotten our plan? When Hong Yuan heard Lung Ruoxua's affirmative reply, she couldn't help but ask anxiously. Hong Yuan, you don't understand men at all. To some men, what they can't get is always the best. Moreover, the more they can't get it, the more challenging it is, and it can stimulate their fighting spirit. So, although my rejection will make him angry, it will also stimulate his strong desire to conquer. So, he will come again. Don't worry. Lung Ruoxua promised. Really? Hong Luan was skeptical because she really didn't understand complicated creatures like humans. Beasts like them were very simple. If they liked it, they liked it. If they didn't like it, they didn't like it. How could there be so many twists and turns? Human life is really tiring. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. By the way, how did you know that Liao Yang was here? Lung Ruoxua asked out of curiosity. Could it be that that fellow had been beating the drums and gongs when he came, so everyone knew about it? It's no secret that Liao Yang comes to the peony garden every time. After all, there are many people who want him to come every day. So, we naturally know about it. Hong Ling said disapprovingly. Then the others also know that he came to my place, right? Lung Ruoxua asked indifferently. That's for sure. There are many women who have their eyes on you. As soon as Liao Yang entered your courtyard, they immediately knew. And if I'm not wrong, there will be women coming to find trouble with you soon. Hong Yuan kindly reminded. You said it's too late. They're already here. Hearing the footsteps, Lung Ruoxua chuckled. She really felt sad for these women. They were actually jealous of a scumbag. Lung Ruoxua, don't think that just because the young master is in your courtyard, you can climb over my head. The woman in the lead shouted in an aggressive manner. She was one of the women who had followed the young master since the beginning and had the highest status in the peony garden. However, Lung Ruoxua did not take her seriously. This made her feel as if her status was being challenged. Please get this straight. I've never thought of climbing over anyone's head, so don't come and provoke me. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Lung Ruoxua laughed coldly as she warned. This woman really didn't remember how to beat her. He had already suffered a few losses at her place, yet he still dared to come. She really didn't understand. Was that man's charm that great? Or was he the only man in the world? You dare to threaten me? The woman in the lead forced herself to remain calm. Actually, she was a little afraid of Lung Ruoxua, who asked Lung Ruoxua to have 2 violent maidservants by her side. Last time, it was because of this woman's words that the 2 maidservants didn't say anything and rushed up to beat her up. One must know that it was a real beating. After the incident, she lay in bed for 2 whole days. Even after taking healing pills, her wound still ached faintly. Thinking about it now, she was still a little scared. Initially, she did not want to find trouble with Lung Ruoxua. However, she could not stand the other women's instigations and took the lead again. Now that she heard Lung Ruoxua's warning, she really wanted to back off, but she felt that it would be too embarrassing. Furthermore, if she backed off this time, these women would probably not follow her lead anymore. Hence, for the sake of her status, she could not back off. So what if I did? However, I'm in a good mood today, so I won't be calculative with you. It'll give you a chance now to explain your purpose in coming here. After that, you can get lost. Lung Ruoxua's tone was cold. We want to know, What did you and the young master talk about? The leading woman gathered her courage and asked. I didn't say anything to him, nor did I complain about you. You can rest assured. However, he did tell me some things. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. What did the young master say to you? The leading woman asked. Do you want to know? Lung Ruoxue asked with an evil smile. Yes. All the women nodded in unison. He said he wanted me to be his equal wife. Lung Ruoxue said calmly. The moment she finished speaking, a huge wave was stirred up. Most of the women were dumbfounded, especially the woman in the lead. She looked as if she had just suffered a huge blow. You're telling the truth? After a long while, the woman in the lead recovered from her shock and asked with disbelief. Do I need to make such a joke? However, I didn't agree to it. Lung Ruoxue continued. You didn't agree? Why didn't you agree to young master's request? When the woman in the lead heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she was dumbfounded. It had been her dream to become the young master's wife for many years, but the young master had never taken a proper wife. Hence, she had temporarily given up on this thought. She had originally thought that the young master would one day realize her good points and give her a title. However, she never expected that the young master would give this promise to a new woman today. This was a huge blow to her. Now, she heard Lung Ruoxue reject her. She was at a loss. Why did other women reject her dream so easily? Chapter 1461. The Guest Elder of the City Lord's Mansion. 3. I don't want to be a bird in a cage. More importantly, my man can only have me as his woman. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. She had said all this to let these women understand that she was not here to snatch their man. She had no interest in that man. She just didn't know if these women would understand her meaning. You really said that to the young master? How is this possible? The young master won't agree to it. The leader of the women asked in surprise. She had never thought that Lung Ruoxue would have such thoughts. In her shock, she also felt a little admiration for Lung Ruoxue. After all, in the divine world, only a small number of women could choose a man as they pleased. Most women would only become accessories or even gifts to men, and she was such a woman. It's up to him whether he agrees or not. I won't fight with you for that man, so you don't have to be hostile to me. Don't disturb me unless it's important. Lung Ruoxue made her words very clear. The reason why she said that was because these women were not challenging to her at all. They were already used to being kept in captivity, and the center of their lives was only that man. Lung Ruoxue absolutely did not want to get involved in this kind of jealousy. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the ladies felt that they had lost interest and turned to leave. After they left, Hong Wan whispered to Lung Ruoxue, "Why did you tell them this? These words will definitely reach Liao Yang's ears. Isn't that great? I don't want that Liao Yang to think that I'm playing hard to get." Lung Ruoxue left. But what if he really loses interest in you after hearing these words? Hong Wan said worriedly. If Liao Yang didn't come, their plan wouldn't be able to proceed. I told you that you don't understand men. In this world, there are many men who like to be cheap. Just wait and see. Lung Ruoxue said with a look of disdain. Oh. Hong Wan nodded her head as if she understood. After chatting with Lung Ruoxue for a while, she took her leave. Just as Lung Ruoxue had said, after Liao Yang angrily returned to his residence, he locked himself in his room and paced around like a trapped beast. The guards outside the door knew that their young master had been refused entry at the peony garden and was in a bad mood, so they didn't dare to disturb him. Men, go and get Zui for me. Suddenly, Liao Yang, who was in the room, loudly ordered. Yes. The guard outside the door replied. Not long after, a young man pushed the door open and entered. Although he was handsome, he was still not as good-looking as the handsome Liao Yang. This man was Zui, who Liao Yang had sent people to find. After entering the room, the man found a chair and sat down. Then he raised his head and looked at Liao Yang, who was staring at him, and asked, "What's wrong? What's the urgent matter? Give me an idea." Liao Yang said anxiously. Then, he explained Lung Ruoxue's situation to Zui. Zui smiled and asked, You want me to help you analyze the truth of that woman's words? N. Liao Yang nodded because he felt that Leng Ruoxue was just playing hard to get. If I say that what she said is true and that it was her original intention, would you believe me? Zui asked with a smile. Of course I don't believe it, because that's simply impossible. Liao Yang said. Young master, nothing is impossible in this world. I know that there are many women who are in love with you, but that doesn't mean that there are no women who aren't interested in you. Zui said with a smile. He knew that his words might not be pleasant to Liao Yang's ears. However, good advice was unpleasant to the ear. He had said what he needed to say. As for whether Liao Yang would listen and how much he would listen to, it was out of his control. You're saying that she's really not interested in me? Liao Yang confirmed. Yes. From what the young master told me, that woman wasn't playing hard to get. She really wasn't interested in the young master. Zui said honestly. As a guest elder of the city lord's mansion, he had to say whatever he wanted. Otherwise, how could he live up to the high reward that the city lord had given him? Young master, I know that the truth is often very hurtful, but you used forceful means to bring that woman to the city lord's mansion. Her impression of you has already deteriorated by a large margin. If you force her to marry you, I'm afraid that it will be even better. So, you can't be forceful when dealing with this kind of woman. If you have patience, you should use gentle means to move her. Otherwise, just let her go. Zui suggested fearlessly as he looked at Liao Yang's gloomy face. Let her go? It's impossible. Liao Yang gritted his teeth. Originally, he had only heard that Leng Ruoxue was an unparalleled beauty, so he wanted to send someone to invite her to the city lord's mansion to meet her. Who knew that they would actually reject him? He had no choice but to use extreme means because he wanted to let the other party know that there was nothing he couldn't do in Plentiful City. As the young master of Plentiful City, he would not allow anyone to reject him. However, after meeting Leng Ruoxue and receiving her cold treatment, he was very clear that it was impossible for him to let her go. Right now, he was extremely desperate to get Leng Ruoxue. He wanted to let that woman know that no woman could disobey his will. Young master, a forcibly twisted melon isn't sweet, and young master doesn't lack women. Why should he be obsessed with a woman who's not interested in him? Zui said disapprovingly. In his opinion, Liao Yang's method of getting Leng Ruoxue here was already underhanded. If he used force to get her, wouldn't that make her hate him even more? Furthermore, even though he had never met Leng Ruoxue before, he did not wish for the immortal realm to be short of a woman with such a personality. It seemed like he would have to make a trip to the peony garden if he had the chance. The more I can't get it, the more I want it. Haven't you heard of this saying? What I can't have is the best. I must have Leng Ruoxue. Liao Yang said stubbornly. Since young master is so insistent, I have nothing else to say. I wish you good luck. Zui stood up and was about to leave, but he was stopped by Liao Yang. Wait, who allowed you to leave? Liao Yang said unhappily when he saw Zui leaving. Is there anything else, young master? I thought I'd made myself clear. Zui raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. Think of a way. I want to get Leng Ruoxue. Liao Yang ordered. Young master, I don't have a choice. Zui's tone was cold. Left wing. I'm your master, and am asking you to think of a way. Do you dare to refuse? Hearing Zui's refusal, Liao Yang immediately pulled a long face and growled unhappily. Young master, you're mistaken. I'm a guest of the city lord's mansion, not a servant of the Liao family. So, you're not my master. Zui reminded with a faint smile. Left wing. If I tell father what you said, I wonder how he would feel. Liao Yang threatened. To him, Zui was a guest of the city lord's mansion, so he was naturally a servant of the Liao family. Therefore, if he asked for Zui's opinion, he couldn't reject it. However, he didn't expect that Zui didn't even take him seriously. This made him feel embarrassed and angry. The anger he had suffered from Leng Ruoxue previously also exploded. If young master feels that these words can affect my position in the city lord's heart, feel free to tell the city lord. Zui said nonchalantly. Then, he turned and left the room without even looking at Liao Yang. Damn it! Seeing that Zui had left without hesitation, Liao Yang angrily smashed the decorations in his room. The sound alerted the guards outside the door. When they ran in, they saw that the room was in a mess. Young master, please calm down. Why should he be angry because of Zui? He's not the only guest elder in our city lord's mansion. The guards saw that the young master was really angry and quickly advised. You're right. Go and find the other guest masters. Tell them I have something important to discuss. Liao Yang thought for a while and said that Zui had never known what was good for him. Sometimes he would not even give face to his father. However, Zui was indeed the most outstanding among all the guest officials, so he had always been treated with courtesy and valued by his father. Therefore, he naturally did not take him, the young lord, seriously. After he had thought it through, he was not so angry. As for Zui, it would not be too late to deal with him after he became the city lord of Plentiful City. Yes. The guard responded and went to gather the guests. After leaving Liao Yang's courtyard, Zui went straight to the peony garden. Although the peony garden was the young master's harem, he could go there whenever he wanted as a guest official who was only second to the city lord. The reason why he went to the peony garden immediately was that he was very interested in the woman the young master was talking about. If he didn't see such a woman with such a character with his own eyes, he would regret it. However, he did not expect that he would regret it even more after meeting Lung Ruoxue. When he arrived at the peony garden, no guard dared to stop him, who had a bad temper. Therefore, he swaggered into the peony garden. After asking which courtyard Lung Ruoxue was in, he headed straight for his destination. When he arrived at the entrance of the courtyard, he saw that the door was not closed, so he entered without being invited. Grape, who was fanning her lady, felt light footsteps behind her. She quickly turned her head and saw an unfamiliar man standing not far away from them. Who are you? Grape asked loudly. Why was it so unsafe for Miss to stay here? There were always strangers coming to cause trouble, and in her subconscious, she had also regarded Zui as one of them. I am Zui, the chief guest of the city lord's mansion. Zui knew that his actions were a little abrupt and quickly introduced himself. What's wrong with the city lord's mansion's guest? Don't tell me that a guest elder of the city lord's mansion can casually barge into a private place? Grape questioned unhappily. She didn't have a good impression of the people from the city lord's mansion. After knowing Zui's identity, she naturally wouldn't give him a good look. Zui didn't know what to say, because he really didn't knock when he came in. Could he say that he had always been in the city lord's mansion as if no one was there? However, this was clearly the city lord's estate's territory. How did it become their private place in this little girl's mouth? Wasn't this a bit of a reversal of roles? He couldn't help but think to himself. Chapter 1462, The Left Wing's Help, 1. Grape. Don't be rude. Lung Ruoxue held back her laughter as she spoke. Following that, she lifted her beautiful eyes and glanced at the man not far away. This man might not look as handsome as Liao Yang, but he had a pair of bright black eyes that were filled with wisdom. Although he always had a smile on his face, Lung Ruoxue was very clear that the gentler a person looked, the harder it was to get along with him. Miss is too kind. She doesn't need to be nice to people who break into private houses. Grape rolled his eyes at Zui and said with a look of disdain, The visitor is a guest. Grapes, serve tea to this young master. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she instructed. From the left wing. Zui hurriedly reminded Lung Ruoxue when she called him young master. However, what he didn't know was that in Lung Ruoxue's eyes, a name was just a code name. It had no meaning at all. Hence, she naturally called him whatever she wanted. This way of calling him would also highlight his identity, so why not? I know, Lung Ruoxue replied softly. Zui wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and thought, You know my name but you still call me guest young master. Are you doing this on purpose? Immediately, Zui concluded that this woman was not an ordinary person. It seemed like Liao Yang was in big trouble this time. However, when he raised his head and saw Lung Ruoxue's face clearly, he understood why Liao Yang was so insistent on getting her. the Lung Ruoxue in his eyes. Although she was half sitting on the deck chair, she was as fresh as a lily in full bloom and as noble as a peony in full bloom. In short, this woman was beautiful from head to toe, and every single one of her features could make men go crazy. Unfortunately, with his judgment of people, this woman was not easy to control. At least, the man who could match her was definitely not an ordinary man. As for Liao Yang, he did not have a chance at all, unless he used some despicable means. However, such a beauty. He was a little reluctant to be defiled by Liao Yang. It seemed that he had to think of a good way to help this woman. I don't know why the guest young master has come? Lung Ruoxue asked innocently. I'm only here to see Miss Lung. Zui said helplessly, tacitly acknowledging the title of guest young master. He could tell that it would be difficult to get Lung Ruoxue to change the way she addressed him. What's there to see about me? Don't tell me you're here to be a lobbyist. Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and guessed. Of course not. Zui quickly denied. Are you really just here to see me? I'm not some rare beast, what's there to see? Lung Ruoxue pretended to be confused as she asked. Her beautiful face was still filled with confusion. Miss Lung is too modest. Zui sighed and thought to himself, you're even rarer than rare beasts. In fact, he had seen many women, but it was the first time he had seen one as difficult to deal with as Lung Ruoxue. Since you've come to see me, there shouldn't be anything else, right? Lung Ruoxue asked in an extremely reserved manner. No more. Zui said speechlessly. He could tell that the other party was asking him to leave. When did he become so unpopular? This hurt his self-esteem a little. Then hurry up and leave. You can save us a cup of tea. Grape, who had just returned from pouring tea, happened to hear the second half of the conversation between Zui and her miss and hurriedly said, Ah. Zui was stunned when he heard Grape's words. He only came back to his senses after a long time. He thought to himself, what kind of people are this master and servant pair? Why was she chasing him away like he was a fly? He even wanted to save a cup of tea. Was he the only one missing? He was depressed. This was the first time in his life that he had suffered such a loss. However, since the other party had already made it so clear, it would be even more embarrassing for him to continue lazing around. Thinking of this, he bowed slightly and then turned to leave. After Zui left, Grape looked at his back and could not help but laugh wildly. Ha! This person is really obedient. Are you done laughing? Damn girl, your mouth is getting more and more sharp. Lung Ruoxue couldn't hide her smile. She was so reserved when she chased him out. However, Grape had said it directly and even said that she could save a cup of tea. She had seen the depressed expression on the man's face when he left. Miss, we don't need to be polite when dealing with the people of the city lord's mansion. Grape said disapprovingly. Zui is different from Liao Yang. Lung Ruoxue said seriously. What's the difference? Aren't we all jackals of the same tribe? Grape said in disdain. Although Zui is a guest master of the mansion of the Castellan, a guest master is not a servant. Besides, Zui is a very proud man. Liao Yang can't command someone like him. Lung Ruoxue said. She had also guessed that Zui had come to the peony garden to see her because Liao Yang had looked for him. However, she was certain that Zui would not help Liao Yang in his evil deeds. Liao Yang is the young master of Plentiful City, the future city lord. How dare that Zui disobey him? Grape asked with a look of disbelief. You also said that he's only a future one. It's still hard to say if he can become the city lord. Lung Ruoxue indifferently reminded. That was true. However, I heard that the city lord of Plentiful City only has one son. If Liao Yang can't become the city lord, then the current city lord of Plentiful City won't give the position of city lord to someone else, right? Grape asked in confusion. Grape, the Plentiful City belongs to the God Lord's mansion, so the city lord position doesn't necessarily have to be inherited. Liao Yang may be the young master now, but it's hard to say if he'll be the city lord. Lung Ruoxue explained. The Liao family was not the true owner of Plentiful City. To put it bluntly, they were just a dog of the God Lord's estate. There were many dogs in the godlord's estate, so the number of dogs eyeing the position of the city lord of Plentiful City was probably not small. I see. After listening to Lung Ruox's explanation, Grape finally understood. However, she really hoped that Liao Yang would not become the city lord, so that he would not be able to show off. It's good that you understand. Grape, I'm going back to my room to sleep. If anyone comes, you can just block them. Lung Ruoxue instructed. With that, she returned to her room, put on her clothes, and lay on the bed. She closed her eyes and concentrated on absorbing the spiritual energy in the air. Chapter 1463, The Help of the Left Wing 2. For the next few days, Lung Ruoxue laid on the bed without moving. To outsiders, she looked like she was sleeping. However, Grape and Lotus Seed knew very well that the young miss was cultivating. Hence, the two of them naturally wouldn't let any random people come and disturb the young miss. In fact, they didn't know that their miss was cultivating at first. Later, when they felt the spiritual qi in the air rushing towards their miss room, they noticed their miss abnormality and realized that she was cultivating. However, what surprised them was that their miss was cultivating even when she was sleeping. They didn't know if the spiritual qi in the divine world could bear it. After carefully observing her for 2 days, they found that their miss didn't show any signs of discomfort, and they slowly relaxed. During this period, everyone who came to look for their miss was turned away by the two of them. Even Hong Wan was not able to see her. However, what puzzled the two was that Liao Yang did not come. At this moment, Liao Yang was like a trapped beast, discussing with the guest elders in the residence on how to make Lung Ruoxue willingly throw herself into his arms. Initially, he did not mind using some extreme means, but who knew that most of the guest elders would oppose it, saying that it was the most despicable method and not something a man should do. Upon seeing this, Liao Yang could only give up on his original idea. However, after discussing for a few days, these guest elders still could not come up with a method that would satisfy him. Fortunately, the men he sent to the peony garden reported that Lung Ruoxue had not left her room for the past few days. This made him feel slightly more at ease. After all, he did not wish for his backyard to catch on fire while he was discussing matters. In Liao Yang's study room, the guest officials were arguing with each other, their faces red and not giving in to each other. Seeing this, Liao Yang growled in annoyance, "Stop arguing. One by one. Young master, you can easily capture an ordinary woman with some tricks. However, this kind of woman is usually not challenging. I heard from young master that Lung Ruoxue is a woman with a very unique personality. Usually, to subdue a woman like this, other than spending a lot of time, you need to have patience. So, I suggest that young master should use the method of pestering. After all, a fierce woman is afraid of pestering men. As long as the young master appears in front of her every day and treats her with all sorts of gentleness, I believe that even if she's a woman with a heart of stone, she'll be melted by the young master sooner or later." A middle-aged guest elder stood up and suggested, "That's absolutely not allowed. The young master's identity was so noble, how could he bow and bend his knees for a woman?" "Young master, that's absolutely not allowed." As soon as the guest elder finished speaking, someone immediately objected. Liao Yang looked at the two of them with a headache. Now he was a little suspicious about whether it was the right choice to ask them to help him come up with an idea, because these people's opinions were always not unified. Now, if he asked them to say it one by one, they would still quarrel. It could be imagined how big the disagreement between them was. Just as Liao Yang was having a headache, a guard suddenly came to report, "Young master, the city lord would like you to go to his study immediately." "What is it?" Liao Yang frowned and asked angrily. He was very annoyed now. Why did his father have to see him now? This subordinate does not know. The guard said with his head lowered, "You guys can continue discussing. I'm going to the study to see father." Liao Yang stood up unwillingly and said to the guest warrior in the study. With big steps, Liao Yang came to the study of his father, the city lord. Before he knocked on the door, he heard a soft voice coming from inside. He was hesitating whether to go in or not, when his father's voice came from inside. "Is it Yang?" Come in. Yes. Father. Liao Yang gently pushed the door of the study and walked in. In the study room, other than his father, the other person was Zui. Liao Yang glared at Zui and found a chair to sit down. Father, is there anything I can help you with? Liao Yang asked carefully. What's wrong? Can't I see you for no reason? The city lord of Plentiful City was named Liao Hui. Although he only had the cultivation of a Sir God, he was very alert, smart, and astute. His mind was also extremely deep. Otherwise, he could not have become the city lord. Father, I didn't mean it that way. Liao Yang could hear the displeasure in his father's words, so he quickly explained. Then what do you mean? I heard you brought another woman in? Liao Hui went straight to the point. Yes. Your son wants to marry her as an equal wife. Liao Yang replied honestly. Although he had this idea for a long time, he had never dared to mention it to his father. Previously, when he said that he had already reported it to his father in front of Leng Ruoxue, it was just an empty promise. After all, he said so many things that he would not take it seriously. However, now that he was in front of his father and with Sui by his side, he had no choice but to bring it up with great caution. Nonsense. I've already arranged your marriage, so you can't have a wife of equal status. No matter how many women you have in private, you can only have one wife on the surface. This is something that no one can change. Liao Hui said very seriously. But, Father, I really like her. Liao Yang said loudly. He had not gone to see Leng Ruoxue for the past few days, so he was very clear about how much he missed that hateful woman. He did not know why, but the colder that woman treated him, the more he missed her. Yang, the wife I've chosen for you will be very helpful for your future, and I've already promised you that you can only have one wife. So, you can't have an equal wife, or else, how will I explain it to the other party? Liao Hui reminded him. However, if you really like this woman, it's fine to let her be a concubine in the future. As for a wife, she can forget about it. Liao Hui said, City Lord, I've seen that woman once, and according to the young master, that woman told him that his man can only have one woman. Zui, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Before he could finish his words, Liao Yang shot daggers at him. If looks could kill, he would have been killed countless times by Liao Yang. However, he didn't care. So she wants to be the first wife? She's quite ambitious. Liao Hui said angrily. Chapter 1464. The Help of the Left Wing, 3. City Lord. That woman's meaning is that she doesn't want to marry the young lord. Zui said very implicitly. He felt very helpless about Liao Hu's arrogance and couldn't help but mutter in his heart, Do you really think that your son is a hotcake? Every woman wanted to marry him. You don't want to marry Yang? Are you sure? Was she playing hard to get? I've seen many women like her. Liao Hui said in disbelief. City Lord, you should trust my eyes, that woman really doesn't want to marry the young master. Zui promised. Then I'm relieved. Liao Hui said with a sigh of relief. Then he turned to Liao Yang and said, Since that woman doesn't have any feelings for you, you shouldn't interfere with her. Next month, father will hold your wedding, so you better get your heart together in advance. As for the women in the peony garden, I will take care of them for you. Liao Hui said very seriously. From his words, it was not difficult to see that he attached great importance to Liao Yang's marriage. Father, what do you want to do with them? Liao Yang's heart sank. Although all men had the habit of liking the new and loathing the old, when he first took those women into the mansion, he also liked them. Now, listening to his father's meaning, the woman he was about to marry would not be able to accommodate them. What should he do? For a moment his bad habit of being tender to women reappeared. That's none of your business. In short, you have to take back your heart before the wedding. You can't keep a single woman in the peony garden. As for the future, you can have as many women as you want, but not now. Liao Hui said loudly. Yes, father. Liao Yang lowered his head and didn't dare to say anything. However, he was thinking about how he could bring Leng Ruoxue out of the peony garden without anyone knowing. He was very clear about his father's methods. He was afraid that the woman in the peony garden couldn't be kept, but he had to get Lung Ruoxue out. Thinking of this, he spoke again. Father, if there's nothing else, you'll be taking my leave. Yes. Liao Hui looked at Liao Yang without changing his expression and nodded. After Liao Yang left, Liao Hui instructed Zui, send some people to guard the entrance of the peony garden. Not even a fly is allowed to fly out. City Lord, are you planning to get rid of the women in the peony garden? Zui asked curiously. Others might not dare to ask this question, but he did. They can't stay now. That family knows of their existence, and this is one of their demands. Liao Hui said helplessly. Although he was a little annoyed at that family's overbearing behavior, that old thing's position in the Divine Master's estate was higher than his. And that old man loved his precious daughter the most. Naturally, he couldn't just watch his daughter fight for love with other women before they were married. If we get rid of them, I'm afraid that young master will be reluctant to do so. Moreover, it's easy for young master to have a bad impression of the city lord. So, those women can't be killed. Zui said after some thought. I can't kill him? But that family can't accommodate them. Liao Hui said in distress. Of course, he knew that Zui's words made sense. However, he had no choice. He was the one who proposed this marriage. That family was willing to marry their daughter over, which was a great honor. Therefore, there must be no mistakes in this marriage. City Lord, don't you have a courtyard in the suburbs? That place is relatively remote and unnoticeable, so it's better to leave those women there for the time being. Zui suggested after some thought. Zui, I'll leave this matter to you. You can't let anything get out of this. Liao Hui reminded. Don't worry, City Lord. I know what to do, but it's best to let the young master know about this first, so as not to be misunderstood by him. Zui said, Good. I'll talk to him about this. Liao Hui nodded. Zui will take his leave. After Zui finished speaking, he gave a slight bow and turned to leave Liao Hu's study. After Zui left, he found his trusted aide and asked him to stand guard at the entrance of the peony garden, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. He then went to the residence of Lung Ruoxue and the others. Young master, why are you here again? Grape looked at Zui, who was standing outside the door and about to knock on it, and asked with a faint smile. I have something to discuss with your young lady. Zui said helplessly. Lung Ruoxue was difficult to deal with, and so was her maidservant. It was true that the master had the same kind of subordinates. I'm sorry. The young lady is sleeping and doesn't want to see anyone. Grape said straightforwardly. The reason why she was guarding the door was that she was afraid that someone would come in uninvited and disturb the young lady. I really have something important to do. Can you wake her up? Zui said anxiously. Of course not. Miss hates to be disturbed when she's sleeping. Furthermore, Miss' mood when she wakes up is especially heavy. I don't want to be punished. Grape refused without any room for discussion. Grape, the young lady is awake. Please invite the young master in. At this time, Lotus Seed walked out of the room and said with a smile, deliberately emphasizing the words, guest master. Looking at Lotus Seed's obviously teasing expression, Zui's gloominess was indescribable. So, Lung Ruoxue and her two maidservants were so evil. How could they bully an honest man like him? He followed Lotus Seed into the living room and sat down. After waiting for a while, Lung Ruoxue came out from the inner room. Why is guest young master so free today? Lung Ruoxue sat down on the main seat and smiled. I have something to discuss with Miss Lung. Zui went straight to the point. What is it? Lung Ruoxue was curious. The young master is getting married next month. Zui said. After he finished speaking, he was still observing Lung Ruoxue's reaction. What does this have to do with me? Lung Ruoxue was confused. He's going to marry the daughter of that family. That young lady is extremely jealous and can't tolerate your existence, so, Zui deliberately stopped at the first half of his sentence. His bright black eyes were fixed on Lung Ruoxue. Could it be that they want to kill us? Lung Ruoxue guessed calmly. She did not know what background that young lady had to be so overbearing to want to get rid of them all. Chapter 1465, The Help of the Left Wing 4. That was the City Lord's original intention, but after I persuaded him, he changed his mind and decided to send all of you to the side courtyard. Zuni explained. He was deeply depressed that he had failed to scare Leng Ruoxue. So you're here to claim credit. However, you found the wrong person. The other girls in the Peony Garden will be more grateful to you. Leng Ruoxue chuckled as she reminded him. I didn't come to you just for this. I want to ask you if you want to leave Plentiful City. Zuni asked cautiously. In reality, the earlier part was just a test. This was the real reason why he had come to look for Leng Ruoxue. He, who had always been cold-blooded, could not bear to see such an extraordinary woman trapped in the back residence of the City Lord's residence. Leng Ruoxue should have a wider world to live in. Don't want to leave Plentiful City. Leng Ruoxue paused on purpose before continuing. What? Zuri thought he had heard wrong. After a moment of shock, he saw Leng Ruoxue's serious expression and realized that she was speaking the truth. How could this be? Could he have guessed wrong? Thank you for your kindness, but I don't intend to leave Plentiful City now. Leng Ruoxue saw the confusion on the other party's face and could only make her words more clear. What do you want to do? I advise you not to act rashly. You're no match for the City Lord's mansion. Zui's mind word. He seemed to have understood Leng Ruoxue's meaning. I'm not trying to do anything. Don't be so nervous. I just feel that the food here is good and I can't bear to leave for a while. Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly. However, Zui did not believe her. In his eyes, Leng Ruoxue was already on the same level as the fox. Guest master, you're the guest master of the City Lord's mansion. If you let us go, I'm afraid you'll also be in trouble, so please keep your good intentions. Don't do this kind of double-crossing thing. This is a big taboo for employers. Leng Ruoxue reminded. You really don't plan on leaving? Zui sighed softly. He was obviously at his wits' end with Leng Ruoxue. However, he still did not believe Leng Ruoxue's words. Yes. Leng Ruoxue nodded. Then I can only follow the City Lord's orders and send you to the courtyard. Zui said helplessly. Young master, since you have the heart to help me, why don't you give this favor to someone else? Leng Ruoxue recalled Hong Yuan's words. If they were sent to a side courtyard, it would be even more difficult to save the Green Wolf. However, if Zui was willing to help, things would be much easier. Who do you want me to help? Zui asked in surprise. Leng Ruoxue didn't want to leave, but from her words, she wanted him to help someone else. A woman named Hong Luan and her fiancé. Leng Ruoxue said softly. She's also from the Peony Garden? Zui asked curiously. Yes, her fiancé is locked up in the City Lord's mansion's prison. If you want to help, then help them. I'll owe you a favor. Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. If they were all sent to a side courtyard, then the plan that she had discussed with Hong Luan would naturally not be carried out. However, with Zui this guest elder, taking the initiative to offer help, when else could they wait? Why did you help them? Zui couldn't understand. This Leng Ruoxue didn't seem like a warm-hearted person. He actually meddled in other people's business. This was truly unbelievable. Isn't it good to be together? Don't tell me you like to see people die? Leng Ruoxue smiled and asked in return. Actually, the reason why she wanted to help Hong Yuan was also out of love for Beastie. After all, in her eyes, Beastie was much cuter than humans. In addition, their love was cross-species, which made it even more difficult. Furthermore, she did not want to see Hong Yuan's long face. Flowers should be happy, shouldn't they? Wait for my news, Zui thought for a moment before saying. He then turned and left. 3 days later, Zui used a substitute to smuggle Qing Lang out of the prison. Following that, he sent his trusted subordinates to escort the two out of Plentiful City. Before they left, Hong Luan wanted to see Leng Ruoxue but was rejected by Zui. In Zui's words, it was not easy to send them out. If they returned to the Peony Garden and were discovered by Liao Yang's men, they would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. He also told them not to disappoint Leng Ruoxue's kind intentions. Only then did he turn around and leave unwillingly. Chapter 1466. I don't beat people up for no reason. 1. After sending off Hong Wan, Zui reported to Liao Hui and secretly moved the women in the peony garden, including Leng Ruoxue and the other two, to a side courtyard on the outskirts of the city. After Liao Yang received news from his father, he knew that his father wouldn't kill the women in the peony garden and was completely at ease. However, from then on, in order to make him change his mind, Liao Hui locked him in the city lord's mansion. Moreover, he didn't plan to let him out of the mansion before marriage to cause trouble. However, Leng Ruoxue found two familiar faces in a courtyard on the outskirts of the city. These two were the sisters, Philip and Fei. When she saw them, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but chuckle in her heart. Did this mean that they had arrived without any effort? They didn't expect Liao Yang to hide them in the courtyard. However, looking at their resentful expressions, it was likely that Liao Yang had long forgotten about the existence of the sisters. "Miss, these two bitches are really here," Grape said angrily when he saw Philip and Fail. If it weren't for these two damned women, they wouldn't have been brought to the city lord's mansion. Hearing Grape's words, Leng Ruoxue smiled without saying a word. Zui, who was beside her, asked curiously, "You know each other?" If he remembered correctly, these two women should be one of Liao Yang's women. However, they weren't content with their place. They only stayed in the city lord's mansion for a few days before they caused a huge ruckus, forcing Liao Yang to find another place to settle them down. He didn't expect Leng Ruoxue to know them. This was truly too much of a coincidence. "We can be considered acquaintances. It's all thanks to them that we were brought into the city lord's mansion by Liao Yang. Don't you think I should thank them properly?" Leng Ruoxue asked with a smile. "Of course I should. Although as the saying goes, words can't express my gratitude for a great favor. However, it's not good to be ungrateful. Since they've done you a favor, you should repay them well," Zui said with a smile. He could tell from Leng Ruoxue's words that she wanted to teach these two women a lesson. Since she had such an idea and liked him, who craved for the world to be in chaos, he would naturally cooperate fully. These two were not his women anyway. Even if they were injured, he would not feel any heartache. "In that case, it'll have to trouble you to arrange for us to be with them." Leng Ruoxue chuckled. "A small matter." Zui nodded and summoned his confidant. After whispering a few words to him, he walked to the sisters and brought them over. "From today onwards, the two of you will be this young lad's maidservants." Zui glanced at the two sisters and said in an extremely cold tone, "On what basis?" When Fei Li heard Zui's words, she was immediately enraged. She had entered the city lord's mansion to enjoy glory and wealth, but now she was being made a servant girl. How could she accept this? Furthermore, she was being Leng Ruoxue's servant girl. This was even more unacceptable. Fei Yi, who was standing beside her, did not say anything. However, her eyes were also burning with anger as she glared at Leng Ruoxue. "Not based on what? Do you think you're here to enjoy life? You're not the young master's concubines, nor are you the guests of the city lord's mansion. That's why you can't live in the city lord's mansion for free. You should know that the city lord's mansion doesn't feed idle people. However, you don't look rich. In that case, you might as well be the city lord's maidservants. It's better than kicking you out," Zui said kindly. However, his words had also infuriated the sisters. They had lived in the city lord's mansion for a few days and were well aware of Zui's position in the city lord's mansion. Therefore, they could only swallow their anger unless they were really willing to leave the city lord's mansion. Although the two sisters did not have any status in the city lord's mansion, their food and clothing were better than when they were at home. Therefore, they were naturally reluctant to leave. But why should they serve Leng Ruoxue? Didn't Leng Ruoxue have no status in the city lord's residence? Why could she be a young lady, but they were servant girls? Such an outcome made the two of them even more resentful towards Leng Ruoxue. Zui, who was eager to see the world in chaos, was very happy to see the tension between the two of them. However, how could Leng Ruoxue's good show be so easily shown to others? A small, fair hand reached out to Zui. He was stunned for a moment before he said, "Your hands are beautiful." When Lung Ruoxue heard Zui's words, she wiped away the cold sweat on her forehead and thought to herself, is this man acting dumb? Could it be that she had extended her hand in front of him just to make him say that it was beautiful? At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, "Guest young master, if you want to watch a good show, you'll have to pay a fee." Can you not be so money crazy? Zui said helplessly. What else does this little girl care about other than money? Why didn't he realize that she liked money so much in the peony garden? Humans die for wealth, birds die for food. What's wrong with being a money grubber, as long as it's obtained in the right way? Lung Ruoxue said disapprovingly. Don't forget, you still owe me a favor. Zui sighed and reminded him. So you're planning to use my favor to exchange for a good show? Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of calculation. The expression on her face was like a big bad wolf trying to abduct Little Red Riding Hood. You wish. How can there be such a good thing? Zui rolled his eyes at Lung Ruoxue and spoke carefully. From his cautious expression, it was as if he was afraid of falling into Lung Ruoxue's trap. Then pay up. It's not that easy to see my good show. Lung Ruoxue extended her hand. However, Zui's expression made her feel a little depressed. She had never schemed against him before, had she? Why was he being so cautious? I want to. Your show hasn't even started yet. Zui was not stupid. He did not see anything. She wanted him to pay? How was that possible? Moreover, even if he saw it, he had to see if the show was exciting before he could decide whether to pay the money. Grape. Let the guest young master try it. Lung Ruoxue turned around and instructed Grape. Grape understood what he meant and walked directly to Philip, raising his hand. Dozens of slaps landed on Philip's face, instantly stunning him to the point that he even forgot to resist. After the grapes were finished, he even said in disdain, "His skin is really thick. My hand is hurting from the beating." In fact, she had wanted to do this for a long time, but because of Ning Hai's face, she was too embarrassed to do it. Now that Ning Hai was not here, when would she do it if not now? Chapter 1467. I don't beat people up for no reason. 2. How ruthless. Zui broke out in a cold sweat as he looked at Philip's swollen face. This girl was not holding back at all. After more than a dozen slaps, Philip was struck silly. Fortunately, these slaps did not land on him. Otherwise, he would not have been able to take it. He couldn't help but think. Don't be afraid. I don't just beat people up. Seeing Zui's expression, Grape laughed evilly and even winked at him. Little Sister Grape is indeed a heroine. Zui said hurriedly, black lines all over his forehead. This little girl actually called herself Big Sister? No matter whose sister she was definitely not his. Besides, he would never admit that he had such a violent sister. Hearing Grape's words, she glanced at Zui. Lung Ruoxue laughed in her heart. Zui probably won't want to watch a good show anymore. However, she had clearly underestimated the left wing's desire to see the world in chaos. Zui smiled calmly and said, "All right. I've barely passed this scene, but you can't charge me too much. I'm very poor." How could the chief guest of the city lord's mansion be poor? Lung Ruoxue wouldn't believe this even if she was beaten to death. However, since he was poor, she had to give him some face. Don't be afraid. I won't ask you for money, as long as you agree to one condition for every show you watch. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. What condition? Zui immediately became alert after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. This was a little fox. Hopefully, there were no traps. I haven't thought about it yet. You can owe me first. It'll naturally come to you when I think of it. Lung Ruoxue laughed. What if I can't do what you ask? Zui asked worriedly. Lung Ruoxue was too cunning. He didn't dare to agree to such a condition. Don't worry. You're definitely capable of fulfilling my conditions. Lung Ruoxue consoled. All right then. In order to enjoy a good show, Zui had no choice but to agree. Little did he know that once he agreed, he would never be able to get rid of Lung Ruoxue. After Zui was settled, Lung Ruoxue instructed Grape to bring the sisters to the courtyard that Zui had arranged for them. In the courtyard, Lung Ruoxue took out a reclining chair from her bracelet and found a spacious place to put it down. She laid down on it and looked at Grapes as she began to preach to the Philip sisters. The Philip sisters, who had long been scared silly by Grapes' fierceness, did not dare to make a sound. Zui saw this and couldn't help but chuckle. When Lung Ruoxue heard the laughter, she turned to Zui and said, "What are you laughing at?" Grape was training them. Looking at their appearance, they don't know how to serve people. If they don't do it well, there will be no food. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Zui wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and thought to himself, "Do you have to be so serious? They were just two enemies." He had already handed her over to her, and she couldn't deal with her however she wanted. Why did she have to lecture him? Could it be that Lung Ruoxue wanted to train 2 more maidservants? Your city lord's mansion doesn't keep idle people, and I won't keep them for free either. So, they still have to know the rules and the things they should do. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Although I've given them to you, it seems that they're still being raised by the city lord's mansion. Zui rolled his eyes and couldn't help reminding him. That's why I should make them worth it. Otherwise, the city lord's mansion will blame me for wasting food. Lung Ruoxue said with a serious face. Her confident expression made Zui speechless. Then you can slowly train them. When there's a good show, send the butler to inform me. I've already informed the butler, and he'll give you the green light. Zui said considerately. Thank you, young master. I want to see you out. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. There's no need to send me off, Zui understood. In fact, he had never expected Lung Ruoxue to send him off. After Zui left, Grape and Lotus Seed began their training for the sisters. The training method for the 2 sisters could be considered demonic because it was based on the training of the Yin clan's maidservants and subordinates, and was modified by Lung Ruoxue. When Grape and Lotus Seed saw it for the first time, they were so scared that their hearts trembled. At the same time, their admiration for Lung Ruoxue was endless like the waves of the river. However, they didn't know at that time that Lung Ruoxue had asked them for the Yin clan's training method. After she had modified it herself, she was waiting for the Faley sisters to use it. Now, towards the young Miss Foresight, the 2 of them were even more impressed. After being trained by Grape and Lotus Seed for 2 days, the fear in Philip and Philip's hearts grew. In fact, Philip was also a priest, but for some reason, under the glare of the maidservant, Grape, her legs felt weak, and Philip trembled like a leaf in the wind, almost falling to the ground. You 2 bitches. Of all people to provoke, you actually came to provoke my family's young miss. Even if my family's young miss is kind enough to let you off, we won't let you off. And everything you're going through now is just the beginning. In the courtyard, Grape stood up straight and scolded the 2 pitiful-looking women with a stern face. The Philip sisters were so frightened by Grape's roar that they could not speak. Furthermore, Philip had not forgotten the violent act that Grape had done to her a few days ago. As there were no medicinal pills to heal her injuries, her face was still swollen. She couldn't help but feel resentful, but she didn't dare to speak out in anger. Grape. Let them rest. I don't think they'll be able to learn anything in their current state. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she pleaded. Miss, you can't be so kind. They caused us to become canaries and be trapped in the city lord's mansion. If we don't teach them a lesson, how can we vent our hatred? Grape said disapprovingly. However, when the Philip sisters heard her words, they could not help but curse in their hearts. How was Lung Ruoxue kind? If she was really that kind, would she have just watched her maidservant torment them like this? All right, I've said it before, they're all up to you. However, you'll be tired in such a hot day, so you'd better rest. Lung Ruoxue continued. Chapter 1468, I don't beat people up for no reason. 3. All right then. I'll give Miss some face. You 2 go back to your rooms and stay there. I won't train you today and will continue tomorrow morning. Grape's words were like a decree of pardon, causing Philip and Philip's hearts to lighten. The feeling of being released was so good. After the 2 sisters returned to their rooms, they looked at the slightly empty room and felt extremely upset. Although their lives in the courtyard were not as good as their lives in the city lord's mansion, the place they were living in was 100 times better than the one they were living in now. Look at the place that the damn maidservant had let them live in now. This was clearly a storage room. How could it be for people to live in? The more they thought about it, the angrier they became. Sister, we can't go on like this. Otherwise, we'll die in their hands sooner or later. Fei Yi said fearfully. Then what can we do? Damn it, why are they here? Fei Li said with a depressed look. After she was sent to the courtyard by Liao Yang, although she was depressed for a few days, she later found out that other than the place where they lived was not as luxurious as the city lord's mansion, there was not much difference in other aspects. Thus, she settled down with peace of mind. After all, they did not have any status now and it was inappropriate for them to stay in the city lord's mansion for a long time. However, she did not expect that the two sisters had only spent a few days as young ladies here when Leng Ruoxue and the others came. Zui had even arranged for them to be Leng Ruoxue's maidservants. That damn Zui, he didn't even give face to Liao Yang. This made them hate Zui as well. Sister, why don't we send a letter to the young master and ask him to save us? I'm going to go crazy if this continues. Fei Yi said with a sad face. You think I don't want to? However, almost everyone here is from the left wing, and even the steward is not being polite to us anymore. How can we deliver the letter to Liao Yang? Philip said with a headache. Sister, as long as we pay enough, I don't believe that no one will be willing to help us with this. Fei Yi suggested. All right then. They'll try to find someone, but they're so strict with us and torture us every day. How can I find them? When Fei Li thought of her current situation, she felt extremely depressed. She had come to the city lord's mansion to enjoy life, but now, she had fallen into Leng Ruoxue's hands. How could she not feel depressed? Sister, why don't you pretend to be sick? They can't possibly force you to continue training when you're sick. Fei Yi said after thinking for a while. Pretending to be sick? Would they believe it? Moreover, with our relationship, even if I'm really sick, I'm afraid they won't let me go. Philip said worriedly. Sister, you won't know if you don't try. Fei Yi encouraged. All right then. I'll pretend to be sick tomorrow, and then take the opportunity to go out and find her. But you have to cooperate with me. I can't let anyone discover my whereabouts. Philip reminded her. Although this sister of his was not very successful, they were both on the same boat now. She did not believe that this sister of his would still be a burden to her. Sister, don't worry. I'll definitely think of a way to stall the three of them tomorrow. At that time, you just need to go out and find them. Fei Yi promised. This was a matter of her freedom. Even if it was not for her sister, she did not want to be tortured by Leng Ruoxue and the others. All right, he said. After the two sisters reached an agreement, they directly fell on the hard bed and fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, Leng Ruoxue and the other two had just woken up when they saw Fei Yi running into their room with red eyes. When she saw them, she immediately cried out, "What?" He started to cry loudly. "What are you crying for? We've seen you crying so early in the morning. Do you want us to be depressed for the whole day?" When Grape saw Fei Yi's tear-stained face, not only did she not have any pity for her, but she also roared in annoyance. Sister is sick." Fei Yi sobbed, but her heart was pounding. These people were really too rough and unsympathetic. It was fine if they didn't comfort her when she was crying like this, but they treated her like a fiend, just like 2 days ago. This was really infuriating. While she was thinking about this, she couldn't think about why he was treating her like this. If it wasn't for the fact that the two sisters had done something that no one could tolerate, they wouldn't have been treated like this. He's sick? That means he's not dead yet. If you're not dead, why are you wailing? Don't tell me you can't wait for your sister to die? Grape said with a look of understanding. She knew that He did not like her sister, so she naturally spared no effort to add oil to the fire. She's my sister. Why would I want her to die? I just want to beg you to save her. She's really seriously ill. Fei Yi said with red eyes. Grape, since Philip is really sick, you should go and ask him for my help. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue finally spoke. Many thanks, miss. Fei Yi quickly replied after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. However, she kept calculating in her heart. When they went to her sister's room, they would know that her sister was really sick. Also, according to her sister, the poison she had poisoned herself could not be cured by anyone other than herself. Following that, Grape and Lotus Seed accompanied Fei Yi to the room to visit Philip. When they returned, they reported to Lung Ruoxue with exaggerated details. Miss, you don't know how much money Philip spent to feign illness. Grape said with a speechless expression. She really did not expect that Philip would hurt her unscrupulously just to ask for help. That woman was cruel to others, but she was even more cruel to herself. It was really too terrifying. Since that's the case, don't let her down. It's not easy for them. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Miss, I'm a kind and good person. In order to help her act more thoroughly, I also gave her some medicine to make sure that her acting will be more realistic. Grape said with a mysterious smile. Arg, did you drug her too? Hearing Grape's words, Lotus Seed could not help but exclaim. You're going offline too? Grape's eyes widened, and she looked at Lotus Seed in disbelief. She never thought that Lotus Seed, who had always been kind in her eyes, would actually do such a thing. Did this count as the young misguidance? What did you put in? Lotus Seed asked curiously. She and Grape had a lot of medicine on them, some for saving lives and some for killing. These medicines were all given to them by Miss for self-defense, so they carried them with them. Some were not even kept in their storage rings, which made it more convenient to use. I gave her some itching powder. Grape said proudly. I gave her stinky eggs. Lotus Seed said. At least you guys are of one mind, there's no next move. Lung Ruoxue's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. She wasn't surprised that Grapes would drug Philip because that girl had a fiery temper. After following her, she wasn't bound by the Yin family's rules, so naturally, she was like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins. However, Lotus Seed, who had always been calm and steady, had actually drugged Philip. This made her sigh. The power of a role model was strong. Of course, she didn't think that Lotus Seed had drugged Philip because of her. So this Grape must be the scapegoat. Miss, how should we deal with Philip? Grape asked with a face full of schadenfreude. This time, that guy was probably going to go for wool and come home shorn. Don't worry about her. Just focus on training Effie today. Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. Yes. Yes, Grape and Lotus replied. After that, they turned around and left Lung Ruoxue's room excitedly. Fei Yi stood in the courtyard, her eyes fixed on Lung Ruoxue and the other two. She was afraid that they would go and see her sister again on a whim. She was afraid that her sister was no longer in the room, and she must not let them find out about this. Poor Fei Yi was still daydreaming, but in reality, the plan that the two sisters had agreed upon was already known by Lung Ruoxue. The reason why Lung Ruoxue was willing to cooperate was because she wanted to kill two birds with one stone. As for the two birds, they were not within the scope of her concern. On the other side, after Philip sneaked out of Lung Ruoxue's courtyard, he found a guard who seemed to be easy to talk to. He begged him to pass a message to the young master, saying that he was waiting for him to save her. When the guard heard Philip's words, he was shocked at first. Then, he saw the injuries on Philip's face and immediately felt sympathetic towards him. He promised that he would help her pass on the message. Upon seeing this, Philip immediately thanked the guard profusely. He even took out a piece of high-grade crystal as a thank-you gift. The guard was initially unwilling to accept it, but Philip forced the crystal into the guard's hands. After that, he told the guard where he was staying and quickly ran back to his simple room. He did not want Lung Ruoxue and the others to become suspicious. If that happened, she would have wasted her time. The guard watched Philip's back as he left, a meaningful smile on his lips. Then he teleported and left the courtyard. Philip returned to his room and immediately lay on the bed. She had already taken the antidote for the poison she had given her, but for some reason, her body still felt as if there were tens of thousands of ants gnawing on it all day long, causing her to itch. She couldn't take it anymore, so she scratched herself with her hands. Wherever her hands could touch, she would leave a trail of blood. If she couldn't touch it, she couldn't help but rub it on the bed to relieve the itchiness and pain on her body. When Fei Yi walked into their room like a dead dog, she saw Philip rubbing against the bed. His clothes were untidy as if he had been. But she knew that was impossible. "Sister, what are you doing?" Philip's strange behavior even made her ignore the stench that she had smelled when she entered the room. "Fei Yi, why are you only back now? My back is so itchy, help me scratch it." Philip quickly ordered when he saw that Fei Yi had returned. "Sister, look at what you look like now. If the young master comes and sees you like this, how can he save us?" Seeing that Philip did not realize that his actions were inappropriate, she could not help but admonish him. After all, this was related to her fate, so she would not allow Philip to make any mistakes. "He won't be able to come so quickly. Hurry up and help me scratch. Don't waste any more time. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave this place, and I won't let you leave either." Philip could not help but warn. Chapter 1469. The Crazy Philip. 1. Fei Yi was extremely displeased by her sister's threat, but she knew her selfish sister well enough to know that she would definitely do something like that. So, she reached out and scratched her unwillingly. With Fei's help, the itchiness and pain on Philip's body eased a lot. However, the stench on her body became stronger and stronger, so strong that Fei was about to vomit. "Sister, why is your body so smelly?" He covered her nose and asked unhappily. "Stinky? What nonsense are you spouting? Why is there a stench coming from my body?" Philip immediately shouted in dissatisfaction after hearing what Fei said. "Sister, it's really coming from you. Can't you smell it?" Fei Yi said in disbelief. How could Philip not smell such a strong scent? It was too strange. "No, I didn't. Fei Yi, you're wrong. How could I have a smell?" Fei Yi said unhappily with a straight face. In fact, she really couldn't smell the smell from her body. This was the advantage of Lung Ruox's elixir. The person involved couldn't smell her elixir, but others couldn't stand it. Not only that, if someone stayed by her side for a long time, they would also smell. Even if she took 100 baths, she wouldn't be able to get rid of this smell. Although this smell wouldn't stay with her for the rest of her life, she still had to take a bath. However, it was impossible to remove it in a short period of time. Is there really a mistake? Seeing that her sister was so certain, Fei Yi was a little uncertain. "You must have made a mistake. I shower every day. You know that," Philip said with dissatisfaction. "Then where did this stench come from?" Fei Yi asked with a puzzled look. "Could it be that you brought it in from the outside? How come I can't smell anything?" Philip's face was also filled with confusion. Hearing Philip's words, he sniffed her own body and was shocked to find that she was also stinky. She was shocked. This can't do. She couldn't bring the stench to the young master. Thinking of this, she said to Philip, "It really seems like it's from outside. Sister, I'm going to take a shower." After she finished speaking, she ran out of the room in a hurry. Her current identity was that of a maidservant, so she could only take a bath in the maidservant's bathroom. When she entered, there was no one there, so she sneaked in like a thief and quickly took a bath before returning to the room. As soon as she entered the room, before she could even sit down properly, Grape sent someone to pass on a message, saying that she should take good care of Philip for the next few days. When Philip recovered, they would train the two sisters together. When she heard this, for a moment, she actually hoped that her sister's illness would never recover. At the same time, the guard who had passed on the message for Philip returned to the city lord's mansion without a sound. He did not go to Liao Yang directly, but went to see Zui's residence. Zui, who was sitting in the study, heard the guard's report and a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. It had only been 2 days, and a good show was about to start? He really did not know how Lung Ruoxue would treat the two women who had betrayed her. He was really looking forward to it. "Master, this message must be passed on to the young master, understand?" The guard asked respectfully. Zui was his real master, but they all called him Lord Zua on the surface. They were the guards of the city lord's mansion now. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't we be letting down that woman's good intentions? By the way, the wound on that woman's face hasn't healed yet, has it? Zui could not help but ask. Not good. It seems to be even more swollen. I was almost scared today. The guard said honestly with a look of disdain. Ha! That little maidservant was really fierce. But I like it. Zui laughed heartily. Ah! After hearing Zui's words, the guard's face darkened. He thought to himself, Master's preferences are so different. Other people liked docile little sheep, but he liked tigresses. However, to have a shrewish maidservant, this master was probably a real tigress. Go and tell this message to Liao Yang. By the way, tell me about the plight of those two women. Remember to make it sound miserable, or else he won't go. Zui reminded with a faint smile. Yes. Master, the wound on Philip's face. The guard only managed to finish his sentence, but he knew that his master would understand. Of course I can't tell you. You have to pick a good one to say. Zui reminded. This subordinate understands. With that, the guard turned around and left. Zui sat in his chair, thinking about what was about to happen. He couldn't help but laugh. He could imagine how shocked Liao Yang would be when he saw that pig-like face. It seemed that he was really too free recently, even wanting to get involved in this kind of thing. However, after the guard informed Liao Yang of the situation, he didn't have much of a reaction. On Lung Ruox's side, things gradually calmed down, but Phelis' injuries had yet to recover. In Lung Ruox's room, the grapes kept walking back and forth, making Lung Ruoxue feel dizzy. Grape, can you stop walking around? I'm going to get dizzy from all the spinning. Lung Ruoxue reminded her in amusement. What trouble had this lass encountered again? Was it because he didn't let her torture the sisters these 2 days? Miss, it's been 3 days, why hasn't there been any movement from the city lord's mansion? Grape pouted her lips in dissatisfaction. The city lord's mansion was too inefficient. And that Liao Yang, didn't he know how to take care of women? Why didn't they come to see the Philip sisters? In fact, the sisters' little plan had always been in their hands. They also knew that Philip had asked someone to send a message to Liao Yang in the city lord's mansion. However, after waiting excitedly for 3 days, there was no movement from the city lord's mansion, which made her a little annoyed. What's the hurry? Zui is watching over there. If Liao Yang comes, Zui will come and tell us. Lung Ruoxue smiled calmly. Previously, Zui had sent someone to inform her. Philip had sent a message to the city lord's mansion, so he would naturally inform her of any movements there. Since someone was willing to be her spy, why not? Chapter 1470, The Crazy Philip 2, Grape. Have you prepared the things I asked you to? Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment before asking. Don't worry, miss. We're all ready. We're just waiting for the fish to take the bait. Grape promised with an evil smile. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded and did not say anything else. That night, the weather in Plentiful City changed, and it started to rain heavily. Lung Ruoxue stood in front of the window and stared at the bean-sized raindrops outside. She was in an extremely good mood. Today's weather was really good. To be precise, today was a good day to do shameful things. She couldn't help but think of the past. Every time she and the demon wanted to do something bad, they would choose a dark and windy time with bad weather. Miss, the wind is strong in front of the window, don't catch a cold. Grape saw Lung Ruoxue standing in front of the window and taking in the cold wind. He couldn't help but remind her. Although they were all cultivators, before they cultivated to a certain realm, they could also fall sick. If cultivators fell sick, it wasn't something that could be cured by taking some small medicine. It doesn't matter. Grape, if I'm not wrong, there should be some movement today. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. No way? It's raining so heavily outside, why would Liao Yang come? Grape said in disbelief. Why wouldn't I? He's been grounded. If he didn't take advantage of this weather, how could he have come out? Lung Ruoxue understood. Liao Yang hadn't shown any reaction these few days not because he didn't want to come, but because he didn't have the chance. Now it was a good chance. That's true. Grape thought for a while and said, "Ha, Miss Lung is really smart." As soon as the two of them finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the window. "Are you trying to scare me to death? How can you come uninvited? You don't even know how to knock." Seeing that the person who appeared was Grape could not help but shout, "It's raining so heavily outside. If I knock on the door, not only will you not hear me, but I'll also have to trouble you to open the door for me. Besides, why are you so timid? Look at how calm your young miss is. You have to learn," Zui said with a smile. The implication of his words was that he did not knock on the door because he was thinking for them. Grape was so angry that he couldn't speak. His pair of beautiful eyes could only glare fiercely at the annoying man in front of him. "Honored guest, did you come here just to anger my maidservant?" Hearing Zui's words, Lung Ruoxue laughed lightly and teased, "Of course not. I'm here to watch a good show. Liao Yang has already set off from the city lord's mansion." Zui laughed evilly. "You're already here, why isn't he here yet?" Lung Ruoxue asked in confusion. She had asked Qing Ju to keep an eye on Philip. "He's the young master. Although he sneaked out, he still has to put on airs. Unlike me, I'm all alone so I can go wherever I want," Zui said with a self-deprecating tone. "Moreover, my cultivation is above his. It's normal for me to be faster than him." Zui added, "So, I'll have to wait a while before he arrives?" Lung Ruoxue said, If there's anything you want to do, you can tell me and I'll find someone to help you." Zui said with a smile, "Have you always been a trader?" Lung Ruoxue was a little speechless. This person was still a guest elder of the city lord's residence. He actually wanted to help her deal with Liao Yang. Although there was someone who came to her door, it would be a waste not to use him. However, she had to ask clearly to avoid causing trouble for herself. How can this be considered a traitor? I'm helping the city lord's son and watching a good show at the same time. Besides, I'm not a servant of the city lord's mansion. It's the city lord who invited me here, not his son, so don't you accuse me," Zui said with a wronged expression. "All right then." Lung Ruoxue nodded. She had accepted Zui's explanation. Then she told part of the plan to the left wing. Originally, she wanted to let Grape and Lotus Seed do this, but for such matters, the more manpower the better. With the participation of the left wing, the plan would be more smooth. However, after Zui heard Lung Ruoxue's instructions, black lines appeared on his forehead. He didn't dare to say how high the cultivation of his confidence was, but wasn't it overkill to ask them to do such a thing? What's wrong? Are you looking down on such a small matter? Lung Ruoxue looked at Zui's expression and knew what he was thinking. No. I just feel that this is a bit of a waste of talent for them. Zui spoke the truth. His trusted subordinates had followed him for many years and had fought their way through all sorts of battles. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. Besides, you're the one who said you wanted to help. Otherwise, I would have asked Grape and Lotus Seed to do it. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. All right then. Zui understood the underlying meaning of Lung Ruoxue's words. If I can be my maidservant, why can't you be your confidant? Guest master, although you agreed reluctantly, believe me, when you see it with your own eyes, you will definitely be satisfied. Lung Ruoxue reminded him with an evil smile. I'll wait and see. Zui said expectantly. After communicating with Lung Ruoxue, Zui sent a message to his confidants and explained the situation to them. Then, the few of them waited patiently. As midnight approached, a sneaky figure sneaked into Lung Ruoxue's courtyard. Needless to say, this person was Liao Yang, who had been waiting for Lung Ruoxue and the others for a long time. The reason why he had sneaked in was because he didn't want his father to find out, and he also didn't want Lung Ruoxue to see him. After all, he wasn't here to see that hateful woman. The moment he thought of that woman who didn't know what was good for her, his heart would be filled with anger. However, at the same time, he couldn't let her go. He was quite familiar with the courtyard, so it didn't take much effort for him to sneak into Lung Ruoxue's residence. He also found the room that Philip mentioned easily. He gently knocked on the door twice, and Fei Yi, who had been sleeping soundly, was woken up. For the past few days, she had been thinking about when the young master would come, so she had not been able to sleep well. Even a small sound would wake her up. "Who is it?" Philip asked in a low voice. She did not dare to make a loud noise in the middle of the night, for fear of alarming others. Chapter 1471. The Crazy Philip, 3. "It's me," Liao Yang said in a low voice. "Young master." Fei Yi was overjoyed. The young master had really come. This was great. Surprised, he quickly got down and opened the door, not even bothering to put on her coat. When he saw Fei Yi, who came to open the door, wearing only a translucent white inner garment, and her towering chest was faintly visible, Liao Yang suddenly felt a hot stream rushing to his head. These days he had been grounded in the courtyard by his father, the mayor. Even the beautiful maidservant beside him had been replaced by his father's attendant, which made him, who had always been a lecherous man, not eat meat for a few days. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how big the impact of Fei Yi's seduction on him was. In fact, the main reason why Liao Hui changed all the women around him to men was that he hoped that his son could cultivate his character and not cause any unsalvageable trouble before marriage. Unfortunately, Liao Yang did not understand his father's thoughts. Instead, he had long been complaining in his heart. He felt that his father was still controlling him a little too much even though he was already so old. "Yi, I miss you so much." Seeing Fei Yi, Liao Yang held her tightly in his arms and moved his hands up and down. "Young master, don't be like this, I'm here." Fei Yi pretended to be shy and avoided Liao Yang's touch. Although she wanted Liao Yang to treat her like this, she still had to pretend to be a lady when it was time. Otherwise, she would be looked down upon by Liao Yang. Although she said no, her body was already hanging on Liao Yang. "It doesn't matter. I'm here to see you too, sisters. I've missed you too so much." After saying that, Liao Yang closed the door and carried Fei to the small bed where she was sleeping. They lay down together. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue and the others who were hiding in a dark corner were in no mood to enjoy the live erotic scenes in the room. Lung Ruoxue smiled at Sui Yi and said, "Do we do it now? Philip doesn't seem to have woken up yet. Go and wake her up." "I'm not going. However, I can send a beastie," Zui said with a look of disdain. After he finished speaking, a fist-sized bee appeared in his hand. The bee's entire body was dark gold, and its 2 pairs of wings were as transparent as crystal. It looked exceptionally beautiful. Lung Ruoxue had not expected Zui to have a bee as a beast. Out of curiosity, she couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at his unique preference. It seemed that this guy had a heavy taste. "Dark. Go and wake Philip up. Her sister is enjoying herself, how can she not join in?" Zui said indignantly. "Ah." After listening to Zui's words, Lung Ruoxue and the other two's foreheads were filled with black lines. They thought to themselves, what is this fellow trying to do? They did not want to wake Philip up so that she could participate in this. Zui's words further confirmed Lung Ruoxue's guess that this man had a strong taste. "Master, when do we make our move?" A guard suddenly ran over and asked in a low voice. "It's not the time yet. They'll give you the signal later." Zui said, "Yes." The guard nodded in response and left silently. "Don't tell me you still want to enjoy the live spring?" Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she teased. However, the word "master" from the guard's mouth had caught her attention. It seemed like Sui was a rather mysterious person. She just didn't know what his background was. At this moment, a scream came from the Philly sisters' room, followed by a man's exclamation, and then a series of banging sounds came out. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" Liao Yang's voice came from the room. When Lung Ruoxue and the others heard it, they all knew that Liao Yang had seen Philip. However, Philip's current appearance did not make Liao Yang feel any pity for her. Instead, it made him even more annoyed with her. It was Philip's fault for ruining his good time. At this critical moment, any man would be angry. "I'm your Philip. I was the one who sent someone to inform you to come and save me." "In the room," Philip said with a pained expression, his voice even a little choked. She's really your sister? Liao Yang said in disbelief. Although Philip was not the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, he still could not accept the fact that this person was calling herself Philip. Moreover, he and Fei Yi were on the same level, which made him even more annoyed with this pig-faced woman. How could she be my sister? Young master, don't listen to her nonsense. It's not like you haven't seen my sister before. Hearing Liao Yang's question, Fei Yi quickly replied. She knew that she could not admit that this woman, who had long lost her human appearance, was her sister. Otherwise, not only would Liao Yang not save her from her misery, but he would also leave in a fit of anger, which was not what she wanted. For the past 3 days, she had tried her best to cover up the smell in the room and on her body. She was afraid that Liao Yang would dislike her when he came. Originally, everything was going smoothly. However, she did not expect that her sister, who had suddenly barged in, would ruin her good plan. At this moment, she really wanted to strangle her sister who failed in her task and was good at spoiling things. It was bad enough that she was unlucky, but why did she have to involve her? Fei Yi, you shameless little bitch, how dare you not acknowledge me? Hearing Fei Yi's words, fury rose in Philip's heart. At this time, she only thought that Philip didn't admit that she was only enjoying Liao Yang's love and wealth alone, but she had long forgotten how terrifying her current appearance was. After cursing, she felt that it was not enough, so she rushed up to Fei Yi, wanting to hit her. However, Liao Yang, who was with Fei Yi, would not give her the chance. He released a gust of wind-type divine power and sent Fei Li flying. Liao Yang's strength was not weak. After being hit, Fei Li fell directly to the wall, and blood flowed down from the corner of her mouth. However, after struggling to stand up, her venomous snake-like eyes stared at Fei Yi, who was trembling in Liao Yang's arms. If hatred could kill, Fei Yi would have died 1,000 times over. Young master, save me. Fei Yi felt Fei Li's gaze and was so scared that she hid in Liao Yang's arms. At this time, Fei Yi's helpless and fragile appearance aroused Liao Yang's desire to protect her. Chapter 1472, The Crazy Philip, 4. Don't be afraid. I'm here. This ugly woman won't dare to do anything to you. Liao Yang quickly comforted him. I won't let you off. Fei Li listened to their conversation, and she hated Liao Yang as well. After calming down, she took out a long knife from her storage ring. This knife was her family heirloom, and she rarely used it. Fei Yi's face turned even paler when she saw the knife. She was no stranger to this knife because when she was young, this sister of hers had used this knife to scare her a lot. And that knife was indeed a treasure knife that could cut through iron as if it were mud. Just looking at the terrifying cold air emitted from the knife was enough to make one's legs go weak. Now that her sister had shown this knife, was she planning to kill her? Fei Yi thought to herself, a little scared. However, with Liao Yang by her side, she was more or less at ease. I advise you not to act recklessly. In the young master of plentiful city. It won't do you any good to provoke me. Looking at the knife, Liao Yang couldn't help but remind the other party of his identity. It was a really good knife. Wasn't it a bit of a waste to leave it in the hands of this ugly woman? So what if you're the young master? Since you've been unkind to me, don't blame me for being unkind to you. Fei Li said angrily. If she had been worried about Liao Yang's identity before, then after Fei Yi refused to acknowledge her and Liao Yang hit her, she had nothing to worry about anymore. She knew very well that even if she did not fight to the death, Liao Yang would not let her go. Since they had already fallen out, she had to find someone to die with. At this moment, Philip was thinking, if I die, you guys won't have an easy time either. After making up his mind, Philip injected his divine power into the long saber. Immediately, the long saber, which was emitting white light, flickered with red light. Then, the saber ray flew toward Fei Yi and Liao Yang. Seeing this, Liao Yang did not care about the weak beauty in his arms anymore. He quickly jumped off the bed and found a safe place to rest. Fei Yi, who was not as strong as Philip, was not so lucky. Although she wanted to dodge, Philip's sword light was mainly aimed at the two of them. He would not give her the chance. Even though A had jumped off the bed, the red light from the blades still managed to cut her skin. The other blades did not want to leave empty-handed either. After their first attack failed, they started to search for their next target. Liao Yang didn't expect that the blade light would attack again. Fei Li, who was not far away, kept releasing the blade light in his hand. For a moment, Fei Yi, who was covered in blood, and Liao Yang, who was in an extremely sorry state, could only run around like headless flies. However, more and more blade lights refused to let them go. No matter where they hid, they would follow them like a shadow. The room they were in was not big to begin with, so it did not take long for both of them to be covered in wounds, and Fei Yi's injuries were even more serious. "Sister, I was wrong. Please spare me." Fei Yi, who was covered in blood, begged for mercy. However, Philip, who had already made up his mind to kill her, would not let her go. "You crazy woman." Liao Yang, who was entangled by the blade light, also shouted, "Impossible! You can't stop after using this blade technique. You can all go to hell with me." Ha! Philip laughed arrogantly. His swollen face became even more distorted, and Liao Yang almost vomited. "Men! Someone come and protect me." Seeing that the ugly woman in front of him had really gone crazy, Liao Yang was a little scared. He didn't care that his sneaky escape from the city lord's mansion had been exposed, so he shouted for help. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who was hiding in the dark and watching the show, raised her eyebrows slightly. She looked at Sui and asked, "As a guest elder of the city lord's mansion, why aren't you going to save him? What's the hurry? He's not dead yet, right? Just leave a breath before you go in." Sui said disapprovingly, "Do you have some sort of deep enmity with this young master?" Leng Ruoxue asked curiously. "No, I didn't. I was invited by his father. Although he's very dissatisfied with me, he doesn't dare to offend me too much. I also don't buy it as long as it's acceptable on the surface, so we really don't have too many disputes." Zuni explained. "Then what are you doing?" Leng Ruoxue deliberately only said half a sentence. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on Zui, waiting for his answer. Chapter 1473, People from the Alchemist Guild Headquarters, 1. "He sneaked out to court death. What does it have to do with me? I don't have the obligation to save him. Besides, he asked for it. I have to teach him a lesson. But the most important thing is that this woman is too scary. I can't afford to offend her. If her blade light hits me and am injured, wouldn't that be an undeserved disaster?" When Zui said this, he looked at Leng Ruoxue with a bitter expression, as if he was saying, "How could you be so cruel? AI. Women are tigers." Zui sighed when he saw that Leng Ruoxue was ignoring him. "It's the man who turned the woman into a tiger." Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. "Miss Leng, tigers are born. How can you blame a man?" Zui whispered disapprovingly because he would definitely have a part in the man Leng Ruoxue was talking about. He could not be the scapegoat. "Then who is to blame?" Leng Ruoxue asked with a half-smile after hearing Zui's words. At this moment, a few more shrill cries were heard from the room. "Arg! Help me! Someone come quickly! Protect me!" The voices came from Fei Yi and Liao Yang. Leng Ruoxue and Zui looked at each other and smiled. However, neither of them had the intention to go in and save him. "Someone's calling for help." The two of them repeated in unison. "Do you want him to die?" Zui asked with an evil smile. "Do you want him to die?" Leng Ruoxue asked in confusion after hearing Zui's words. "I don't care. He's not anyone to me." Zui shrugged his shoulders and said, "I don't want him to die now." Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She had underestimated how crazy Philip was. Her plan had basically died before it could even be carried out. This made her a little unwilling. However, there was a benefit to this. At least, the city lord would not pin the blame on them. Then let them cut him a little longer. I'll order people to save him. Zui said with a smile. "I think we can go back and sleep." Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. "That's reasonable." Zui agreed with this idea, but action was better than action. After making the decision, Zui explained it to his confidants and they went back. The next morning, before Lung Ruoxue had even given her instructions, Grape had gone to gather information with a face full of curiosity. When she returned, she did not wait for Lung Ruoxue to ask and told Lung Ruoxue and Lotus about what she had gathered with a smile. It turned out that after they left yesterday, Zui's men did not immediately go in to save the young master. When they went in, Liao Yang was almost dying. As for the sisters, they had already stopped breathing. No one could save them. Although Grape felt relieved that they were killing each other, she also felt a little regretful because the plan they had arranged did not work. They had made her excited for a few days, which was really depressing. However, after Lung Ruoxue heard her words, she told her with certainty that the matter was not over yet. Liao Yang was wounded to the point of death, and the main culprit had died. So, who would the depressed city lord vent his anger on? Without a doubt, the people living in the courtyard would definitely become the scapegoats, and they would probably be the first to bear the brunt. However, if there were any signs of trouble, the left wing would most likely inform them. Hopefully, the city lord was a smart person and would not do anything stupid. Otherwise, she could not guarantee what she would do. At this moment, the city lord's residence was just as Lung Ruoxue had expected. It was shrouded in dark clouds. In Liao Yang's room, Liao Hui kept walking around with a dark face. The others in the room saw this and didn't dare to make any sound. The atmosphere was extremely tense. At this time, Liao Yang's room door was pushed open again. Zui strode in and looked at Liao Yang lying on the bed. He frowned and said, "City Lord, what's wrong with the young master? How did you get so badly injured?" His face was filled with confusion. Luckily, Lung Ruoxue wasn't here. Otherwise, she would definitely say that he was acting. Continue acting. Left wing. Where have you been? After Liao Hui saw Zui, his face darkened and he asked unhappily. Something happened to his precious son. He wanted to find Zui to discuss the countermeasures, but he could not find him. This made him even more angry. I went to the neighboring city to do what the city lord told me. Didn't I mention it to you before? Zui said with a wronged expression. Oh. After Zui's reminder, Liao Hui remembered that Zui had told him that he was going to the neighboring city. However, because of his mind was in a mess and he could not remember anything at all. He only wanted to find his favorite guest elder to discuss countermeasures, but he could not find him. This made him more and more anxious. City Lord, who injured the young master? Seeing that Liao Hui did not answer his question, Zui continued to ask, He knew Liao Yang too well. If he didn't ask clearly, Liao Yang would definitely doubt his loyalty. Of course, he had to put on a show. In fact, ever since he found out that the sisters had sent someone to pass a message to Liao Yang, he had been preparing to find an excuse to leave the city lord's mansion. At this time, Liao Hui had something to ask him to do. With an excuse, he naturally would not stay any longer. In just one day, he had completed the task that Liao Hui had asked him to do. Then, he returned to Plentiful City without anyone knowing. All of this, except for a few of his confidants, no one else knew. He also cleared his name to avoid Liao Hu's anger. By 2 bitches, but they're already dead. Liao Hui gritted his teeth and said. Hatred flashed in his eyes. How did you get hurt by 2 bitches? Wasn't the young lord grounded in his room by the city lord? Zui asked with a puzzled expression. The expression on his face was as pure as it could get. AI. It's really embarrassing to say. Liao Hui sighed and then said, Yang sneaked out of the city lord's mansion last night to see the bitch who was locked up in the courtyard. I really regret that I was soft-hearted at that time and didn't deal with those women. Otherwise, how could Yang be in trouble? City lord. The women in the side courtyard have all followed young master for many years. They shouldn't have the guts to hurt young master like this, right? Zui frowned and pretended to be confused. In fact, he was laughing inside because Liao Yang was too funny now. His whole body was wrapped in gauze and only his eyes could be seen. He did not understand how serious his injury was. Chapter 1474. People from the Alchemist Guild headquarters. 2. If they didn't have the guts, why would Yang be lying in bed unconscious? Liao Hui said with some hatred. He had told Yang long ago that women were a source of trouble and asked Yang to restrain himself, but his son didn't listen. Now, something had happened. City Lord. Which woman was the one who hurt him? Zui asked again. It's a pair of sisters called Fei something. I heard that he didn't follow Yang for long. Liao Hui sighed and said. He had already ordered his subordinates to throw these two sisters into the river to feed the fish. However, he still did not feel any hatred. Oh, City Lord, since the two sisters are already dead, doesn't that mean that the young master can't avenge them? Zui pretended to ask. In fact, he asked this because he wanted to know what Liao Hui was going to do next. I've already sent people to investigate their family's address. I believe we'll be able to find it very soon. Even if they're dead, I won't let their family off. Their families must pay the price for their daughter hurting Yang. Liao Hui said fiercely. We must take revenge for the young master. Zui said, hoping for the world to be in chaos. After all, the person the city lord wanted to kill had nothing to do with him, so he was happy to watch a good show. Zui Yang is injured to this extent. I don't intend to let the women in the courtyard off. Liao Hui said, City Lord. The young master's injury has nothing to do with the other women, but if we kill those women as well, it will affect the young master and the city lord's reputation if word gets out. Zui reminded him with a worried look. I can't care anymore. Those women actually left Yang in the lurch. How could I tolerate them? Liao Hui said with some hatred. Leave him to die? City Lord, why do you say that? Zui appropriately showed his confusion and asked. Yang was so seriously injured. He must have asked for help before he fainted. However, no one went to save him. Don't you think they deserve to die? Liao Hui gritted his teeth and said, City Lord, I can understand that you want to kill them to avenge the young master, but killing them is really not a wise move. Although those women's families are not very powerful, and they may not have a high status in the family, but the purpose of their existence is also proof that the family behind them has a good relationship with plentiful city. If the city lord kills them in a rage, what will those families think? Would the young master be sad when he woke up? Besides, it rained heavily last night, so it's understandable that they didn't hear any cries for help. If it wasn't for the heavy rain, I could have rushed back to the city lord's mansion last night. Zui advised him earnestly. As for whether Liao Hui would listen to him, it was none of his business. I understand what you're saying, but am not willing to accept this. Liao Hui kept sighing. The reason why he didn't kill those women last time was not only because he was afraid that his son would be sad, but also because of their families. After all, most of the women had families. City Lord, the most important thing right now is to treat the young master's injuries. We can discuss the rest later. Zui reminded. I know. I've already sent someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite an alchemist. Liao Hui said, Why did you go to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people? Doesn't our plentiful city also have an Alchemist Guild? Zui asked in confusion. They can't cure Yang Heir's injuries. Liao Hui said dejectedly. Is the young master's injury very serious? Zui couldn't help but ask. Yesterday, after he left the courtyard, he had gone to find a place to sleep. When he returned to the city lord's mansion, the housekeeper had immediately told him that something had happened to Liao Yang. Therefore, he didn't have time to ask his confidant about the details of the situation and went straight to Liao Yang's residence. Liao Hui nodded but did not elaborate. City Lord, the heavens will help the young master. He'll be fine, don't worry. Zui consoled him with a concerned look. I hope so, Liao Hui said with a face full of worry. In fact, he knew his own suffering. After Zui consoled him, he stayed in Liao Yang's room for a long time before he found an excuse to go back to his room. As soon as he returned to his room, he summoned his confidant and wanted to ask about the situation last night. In the room on the left wing, the guards seemed to have difficulty speaking. Just say what you have to say. Don't act like a woman and be so coy. Zui really wanted to kick his confidant a few times when he saw him like this. Master, Liao Yang is dying. The guard said in a low voice. What do you mean? Isn't he still alive? Zui was confused. He's alive, but he can't do it in that area. The guard said, blushing. In that aspect? Zui didn't understand, and his face was full of question marks. That's the part that men care about the most, and he's impotent. The guard saw that his master still didn't understand and could only explain. It's true. It's retribution. After Zui heard the guard's words, he couldn't help but laugh wildly. That woman, Philip, was really capable. She had actually made a lecherous man impotent. This was a big blow to Liao Yang. This was definitely more unbearable than killing him. No wonder Liao Hui went to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people. However, can this kind of illness be cured? Zui mumbled to himself with a curious expression. In the immortal realm, he didn't seem to have heard of any medicinal pill that could cure impotence, right? Your subordinate does not know. The guard's face turned red and he didn't know what to say. Obviously, his master's question made him very embarrassed. Oh, you can leave now and keep a close eye on Liao Yang's movements. If there's anything, come and tell me immediately. Zui was speechless as he looked at his confidant's shy expression. He didn't ask anything he shouldn't have, did he? Why would a man be shy? He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Hearing Zui's words, the guard heaved a sigh of relief and immediately ran out of his room. Zui was depressed as he watched his confidant run away faster than a rabbit. Was he that scary? However, even though he was depressed, he still had to share the good news with his partner. Therefore, when he found out that Liao Yang was impotent, he immediately sent into Lung Ruox's residence to tell her the news. Chapter 1475. Someone from the Alchemist Guild headquarters arrives. 3. In the courtyard. In Lung Ruox's room, she looked at the uninvited little thing in front of her and a few drops of cold sweat dripped down her forehead. Just come if you want to. What was he trying so hard to act cute for? That fist-sized dark golden bee was currently staring at Lung Ruoxue with its large, watery eyes. It did not even blink as it stared at her. Furthermore, its face seemed to reveal a trace of shyness. However, when it saw that Lung Ruoxue did not take the initiative to respond to it, its gaze turned into a hidden bitterness. Little dark, right? How could you abandon your master? Lung Ruoxue couldn't stand this bee's resentful gaze anymore. If it continued to stare at her like this, she would definitely think that she had done something to let it down. In fact, this was only their second meeting. I didn't abandon my master. My master ordered me to deliver this letter to you. It was not hard to hear a hint of resentment in its tone. However, what Lung Ruoxue did not know was that it was precisely because she did not greet Little and warmly that the extremely fragile little bee was sad. Oh, any good news? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. Master said, Liao Yang is impotent and said that Liao Hui wanted to take revenge for his son by killing the woman living in the courtyard. However, he was persuaded by him for the time being. Dark answered honestly. You're infertile? Lung Ruoxue was taken aback. She never thought that Philip would do something like this. This woman was too ruthless. It seemed like she had to learn from her. Master told you to be careful because Liao Hu's mental state is not normal. He might change his mind at any time and send people to kill you. Dark warned. Master also said that Liao Hui went to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people. I don't know if they can cure Liao Yang. Said Dark. Alchemist Guild headquarters? When the alchemists from the Alchemist Guild headquarters arrive, they'll have to trouble you to inform me again, Little Dark. Lung Ruoxue requested with a smile. Then, she took out a red fruit filled with dense spiritual qi from her bracelet and handed it to Dark. Thank you. Little Dark took the fruit joyfully and took a bite. It immediately felt a warm stream of energy flowing into its body. The warm feeling was so comfortable that it almost cried out. The fruit was so delicious. It couldn't help but sigh in its heart. Seeing that Dark was eating happily, Lung Ruoxue took out a few more fruits and told it to keep them well and not let its master find out. Otherwise, it would not be able to eat them. When An heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he was so frightened that he hurriedly kept the fruits into his spatial pocket. Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, almost laughed out loud when she saw how cute the little bee was. This little fellow was quite cute too. After delivering the message and receiving Lung Ruoxue's gift, it flapped its little wings and flew away happily. After Dark left, Grape, who had not said a word, could not help but ask, "Miss, I didn't expect Liao Yang to be impotent. I don't know if it's true or not. Could it be a fake news that the city lord's mansion deliberately made up?" She was a little suspicious. "I don't think so. It said that Liao Yang's wedding is near. If the city lord's mansion deliberately spread some false news, I think there's no need to hold the wedding next month." Lung Ruoxue said, This is karma." Grape said with relief, "Miss, now that Liao Yang is impotent, his wedding should be cancelled, right?" Grape said nosily, "I don't think so. The city lord of Plentiful City won't let this news spread. Moreover, didn't he send someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite someone?" Lung Ruoxue said with a chuckle. She wondered who the person from the Alchemist Guild headquarters would be. It would be great if it was Luan, she thought. "I hope no one can save him." Grape said through gritted teeth. It doesn't matter if you save him, at most, you'll make him impotent again." Lung Ruoxue teased, not taking it to heart. "What Miss said is really good." Grape said in agreement. After that, the two of them looked at each other. The meaning in their eyes was obvious. Because of Liao Yang's injury, both the city lord's mansion and the courtyard had temporarily calmed down. However, under this calm surface, there was a bloody incident that could break out at any time. The main reason why Liao Hui was willing to endure it was that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters had not arrived yet. After waiting for several days, the alchemist from the Alchemist Guild headquarters finally arrived. As Liao Yang's injuries were more serious, the Alchemist Guild headquarters had specially sent a vice guild master over. However, this person was not Luan. After Liao Hui received the report from his subordinate, he personally went to the door to welcome this important guest from the Alchemist Guild headquarters. "President Shen, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I've been waiting for the stars and the moon. You've finally come." Liao Hui said excitedly when he saw the vice president sent by the Alchemist Guild headquarters. Of course, the reason why he acted this way was mostly an act. After all, he had to show that he valued the other party so that the other party would do his best to treat young heir's injuries. "Hello, City Lord." A tall, middle-aged man said calmly and politely. He was so polite because he didn't know how to answer Liao Hui's words. "I haven't seen how sick your son is. If you can't be cured, you'll eat me up." After all, as an alchemist, what he was most afraid of was that his family members would place all their hopes on him. This would cause them a lot of pressure. After all, alchemists were not omnipotent. "President Shen, I'm sorry for the delay. Please come in quickly." Liao Hui pretended to be calm and said, This vice president's name was Shen, and she was an alchemist imperial master. This was an existence that was only second to an alchemy god. And the only alchemy god in the divine realm was that president who had always appeared and disappeared like a ghost. However, the president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters was too mysterious, and no one knew his whereabouts. Thus, the people who usually took charge of the Alchemist Guild headquarters were the three vice presidents. The three vice presidents each carried out their own duties and managed the Alchemist Guild headquarters in an orderly manner, so the entire Alchemist Guild could be considered harmonious. "City Lord Liao, please take me to see young Lord Liao's injuries first," Shen said as she walked. From Liao Hui's words, it was clear that he wanted to treat him well first. However, he didn't come here to enjoy himself. As an alchemist, he had a heavy sense of responsibility. If he didn't see the patient's condition, how could he be in the mood for anything else? "President Shen has specially come for my son. I originally wanted to let you rest for a while, but since President Shen wants to see my son's injury first, then I can only respectfully comply. Actually, when he first saw Shen Nua, he wanted to drag her to treat his son's injuries. However, Shen Nua's identity was extraordinary. Even if he was anxious, he did not dare to rush her too much. After all, she was not his subordinate. If he were to calculate carefully, Shen Nua's status in the divine world was much higher than his. Not to mention that he did not dare to easily offend Shen Nua. Even the divine master's estate would not easily provoke these alchemist and weapon master with extraordinary status. City Lord Liao. You don't have to be so polite with me. Young Lord Liao's injury is the most important. Shen Nua said disapprovingly. In fact, the reason why he came here without stopping was mainly because he didn't want to stay in Plentiful City for too long. Although there was a considerable distance between the Alchemist Guild headquarters and Plentiful City, he didn't mind. After seeing Liao Yang's injury, he would treat it if he could, and if he couldn't, he would leave immediately. Who asked him to come here and not willingly? After Liao Hui sent someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to ask an alchemist to treat Liao Yang's injury, the three vice guild leaders had a discussion and wanted to send a saint alchemist to convey the message. After all, they were well aware of Liao Yang's reputation and the reason for Liao Yang's injury, which made their impression of him even worse. The three of them were not stupid and did not think that an alchemist should have the heart to save all living beings. However, Plentiful City belonged to the Godlord's estate, so, for the sake of the Godlord's estate, they had to send an outstanding alchemist to treat Liao Yang's injuries. However, who knew that the person who came was too ambitious? He was not satisfied with the alchemist they sent and wanted the three of them to personally treat him. He even said that if they did not personally treat their young master's injuries, they would be looking down on the Divine Lord's estate. When the three of them heard the man's unreasonable words, they were furious. However, they did not want to fall out with the Godlord's estate. Therefore, they had no choice but to send an unlucky person to meet Liao Yang. It was his fault for losing the bet. I'll thank President Shen first, Liao Hui said with a smile. After that, Liao Hui took his time to bring Shen Nua to Liao Yang's room. When they arrived at Liao Yang's room, Shen Nua carefully checked on Liao Yang's injuries, but she did not say a word. When she saw that he had become silent, Liao Hu's heart instantly jumped into his throat. Damn it, can he be saved or not? You should just tell me. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. At this time, Liao Yang's injuries had almost recovered after the treatment of the elixir. The only thing that had not recovered, and what they were most concerned about, was Liao Yang's impotence. Liao Yang was Liao Hu's only son. If he was really impotent, wouldn't the Liao family have no descendants? This was absolutely unacceptable to Liao Hui, and even more so to Liao Yang. However, Shen Nua did not say anything for a long time, so even if Liao Hui was anxious, he could only endure it. Can my injuries be cured? Liao Hui could bear it, but Liao Yang couldn't. Please forgive me for not being able to help you with young Lord Liao's injuries. Upon hearing Liao Yang's question, Shen Nua helplessly replied. His injury there was too serious, and even the best healing medicinal pill could not heal the injury there. Moreover, the veins and arteries there were all shattered. Aren't you an alchemist from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Why can't you cure my injuries? With your strength, what qualifications do you have to stay in the Alchemist Guild headquarters? I'm going to file a complaint to the Alchemist Guild headquarters and have them expel you. When Liao Yang heard that the man in front of him said that he couldn't cure him, he was instantly enraged and shouted without a care. When Liao Hui heard Liao Yang's words, his expression changed drastically, and he quickly gave his son a look, telling him not to say anything. Although he was very disappointed when he heard that Shen Nua couldn't cure Liao Yang, Shen Nua's status was obvious. He wasn't someone that this prodigal could insult as he pleased. However, Liao Yang, who was in a rage, obviously did not notice his father's gaze. At this time, his heart was filled with anger and despair. Chapter 1476, Meeting Shen Nua 1. Whether I have the qualifications to stay in the Alchemist Guild headquarters is not something a young brat like you can decide. If you want to complain, go ahead. However, I can tell you bluntly that if I can't cure an injury, no one in the Alchemist Guild headquarters can cure it. Shen Nua said coldly. After he finished speaking to Liao Yang, he stood up and said to Liao Hui, City Lord Liao, I can't do anything about your son's injuries. Please find someone else. Goodbye. Your Excellency Shen Nua. Please wait. After Shen Nua finished speaking to them, she left without even turning her head back. However, Liao Hui could not let Shen Nua leave like this. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to ask for help from the Alchemist Guild headquarters in the future. After all, no one in the divine realm was willing to offend an alchemist. At that time, the God Lord's estate would also blame him. Compared to his son's injury, this consequence was even more unbearable for him. However, with Shen Nua's God King level cultivation, if she really wanted to leave, how could Liao Hui catch up to her? He had just chased her out of the room, and Shen Nua was already gone. This made him both angry and annoyed. In Liao Yang's room, Zui looked at Liao Yang with a smile and slowly said, Young master is really too impulsive. Even if he can't cure your injury, you can't be angry at an alchemist. What does it have to do with you? If he can't even treat such a small injury, it's clear that his skills are inferior. Liao Yang was already in a fit of anger, and when he heard Zui's words, he became even angrier. This small injury? Young master, your injury may not be big, but it's very troublesome. I've never heard of any alchemist in the divine world who can cure the injury there. Zui reminded with a faint smile. In fact, he was gloating. That guy just now couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean others can too. If the Alchemist Guild's 3 vice guild leaders are willing to help treat me, I will definitely be able to recover. Liao Yang shouted with confidence. Young master, that esteemed one just now isn't an ordinary alchemist. He's one of the 3 great vice guild leaders of the Alchemist Guild headquarters, Shen Nua. Now that he said he can't cure you, do you think there's anyone else who can cure your injuries? Zui said helplessly. However, in his heart, he looked down on Liao Yang's arrogance. Not to mention that Liao Yang's injury could not be cured, even if it could be cured, after offending Shen Nua. He did not think that the Alchemist Guild headquarters would still send people to treat Liao Yang. What? Hearing Zui's words, Liao Yang's face turned pale. He was obviously frightened by the identity of the alchemist just now. You're lying to me, I don't believe you. After a long while, Liao Yang shouted again. What do you not believe? Liao Hui, who just returned to his room, asked coldly. Father, he actually told me that the person just now was the vice president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters. Quickly tell me this isn't true. Liao Yang ignored his father's ugly expression and shouted in disbelief. This is real. Liao Hui said, somewhat resentful that he had failed to live up to his expectations. Did this thing that was incompetent and good at causing trouble not know that they had a request from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? He actually spoke to him like that. If it was an ordinary alchemist, he could have sent someone to apologize, but he just had to be the Alchemist Guild's supreme vice president. This wasn't something that could be coaxed with a simple apology. Father, he's really Shen Nua? Hearing his father's words, Liao Yang was truly afraid. He could choose not to believe Zui's words, but he had no choice but to believe his own father's words. What should he do? Could it be that there's someone else who would dare to impersonate him? Liao Hui shouted angrily. After he chased out of the room, he did not find any traces of Shen Nua. This made him extremely angry. If the person who angered Shen Nua and drove her away was not his only son, he would definitely strangle that bastard to death. Father, what should I do? You have to help me. I don't want to be a cripple. Liao Yang said with a long face. You're asking me, but who should I ask? Weren't you very powerful just now? I gave you a look to tell you to shut up, but you didn't listen. Now you want to ask me? Liao Hui was very angry. Father, I was wrong. I only lost my composure when I heard that my injuries could not be treated, and I did not know his identity. I am willing to apologize to him. Liao Yang said with a face full of fear. He also knew that the Alchemist Guild headquarters could not be offended, because if they really angered the Alchemist Guild headquarters, It would be difficult for them to ask for help from the Alchemist Guild headquarters if someone from their side was injured in the future. Guilty? Do you think that you'll be fine just by apologizing? He's the vice president, even your father doesn't dare to speak to him like that. You're so good, you actually dare to question his status as an alchemist. Liao Hui suppressed his anger and said, "Father, I really know I was wrong." Liao Yang's eyes were filled with tears as he said pitifully, "City Lord, the matter just now couldn't be completely blamed on young master. Moreover, what was the use of saying all this now? We should think of how to appease Sir Shenhua's anger." Zui said, "I also want to." However, Sir Shenhua has already left the city lord's mansion in a fit of anger. However, I've already sent people to look for him. Liao Hui sighed and glared at Liao Yang before saying helplessly, "Zui, you have to help me think of a good idea. I don't want Sir Shenhua to leave in a huff." Liao Hui said, "City Lord, the young master will definitely have to pay for the crime himself. As for the rest, let me think about it." Zui said after some thought. "Good. Then you should quickly think of a countermeasure." Liao Hui urged, "Okay, I'll take my leave first." Zui gave a slight bow and left Liao Yang's room. After Zui left, Liao Yang was a little dissatisfied. "Father, why did you ask him to leave so quickly? I'm sick now, shouldn't he be serving me?" "Serve you, my ass. He's a guest, not your servant, so don't put on the airs of a young master in front of him. If I hear such words again, don't blame me for being cruel." Liao Hui was so angry that he shouted at the top of his lungs. This prodigal! He had just driven Shenhua away, and now he wanted to find trouble with Zui. Unfortunately, these two people were not to be trifled with. It was a pity that this blind son of his could not see through it. So, if she had known that he would become like this, she would have just strangled him. After he finished speaking angrily, Liao Hui slammed the door and left Liao Yang's room. After being scolded again, Liao Yang blamed all his hatred on Zui. He didn't dare to offend Shenhua, but would he be afraid of a small guest elder? From the beginning to the end, he had never taken Zui seriously. No matter how many times his father had told him, in his eyes, Zui was only a subordinate of the city lord's mansion. Since he was a subordinate, there was no reason for him to not listen to him. Chapter 1477, Meeting Shenhua 2, Zui left Liao Yang's room and returned to his study. At this moment, one of his trusted aides was already waiting for him in the study. "Master!" Seeing Zui walk in, the guard hurriedly saluted. "Yes, what's the news?" Zui asked indifferently. "Master, Sir Shenhua has moved into the city's full moon restaurant, and I have already sent people to keep an eye on her." The guard reported. "Moon Pavilion? Why didn't he leave Plentiful City?" Zui muttered to himself with a face full of regret. His words made the guard break out in cold sweat. "This subordinate does not know," the guard hurriedly said, and couldn't help but secretly think, "Master, you're now a guest elder of the city lord's mansion." Even if he didn't do his best for the city lord's mansion, there was no need to drag them down. Those who didn't know would definitely think that there was a deep hatred between their master and the city lord's mansion. In fact, he was well aware that his master was bored. "You may leave." Zui sighed. "Yes." The guard replied and left the study. After the guard left, Zui summoned Dark and said, "Go and tell Leng Ruoxue. Just say that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters have arrived and are now living in the Full Moon restaurant." "Yes, master." When Dark heard that it had to report the situation, it was overjoyed. This way, it could eat delicious fruits again. It had already destroyed all the fruits that Leng Ruoxue had given it the last time. Little Dark flapped its wings and flew out of Zui's study room happily. It went straight to Leng Ruoxue's residence. In the courtyard, Leng Ruoxue was lying in the garden, basking in the sun. When she saw the little bee that had suddenly appeared in front of her, she knew that there was new news. "Dark, you're here." Leng Ruoxue stretched out her hand and held it in her arms. "Master told me to tell you that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters have arrived and are now living in the Moonview restaurant." "Let's go," Dark said straightforwardly. Then he looked at Lung Ruoxue expectantly. Lung Ruoxue chuckled when she saw the expression on Dark's face. She then took out a few more fruits and handed them to him. The moment Dark saw the delicious fruits, its eyes lit up and it immediately kept them into its spatial pocket. It then looked at Lung Ruoxue with a satisfied and grateful expression. What an easily satisfied little fellow. Just a few fruits were enough to make it so happy. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but think to herself, beasts are easier to satisfy than humans. After delivering the message and getting the fruit that it liked, it flew away with satisfaction. Miss, why do you want to see someone from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Grape asked after Dark left. I want him to help me deliver a message. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. Although she didn't know who the person from the Alchemist Guild headquarters was, she was sure that Luan wouldn't reject her if she asked him to bring a message to her. Does young lady have an acquaintance in the Alchemist Guild? Grape's face was full of surprise. He thought to himself, Miss is really too amazing. She's in the Divine Mainland, and yet she still knows people in the Alchemist Guild. One should know that even people in the divine world might not be able to get to know an alchemist. Moreover, alchemists who can enter the Alchemist Guild's headquarters are all symbols of status and status. Ordinary alchemists couldn't even enter the headquarters. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded. Miss, doesn't that mean we'll have to go out later? Grape asked. We do have to go out. Grape, go find Wang Tong and ask him to help us arrange it. Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment and ordered. Wang Tong was one of Zui's confidants. Besides, Zui had told her clearly that if she had anything to do, she could just look for Wang Tong. Yes. Yes, sir. Grape nodded and left. After the arrangements were made, Lung Ruoxue and the other two left the courtyard quietly. The three people walking on the street were all dressed in men's clothing. This was a decision Lung Ruoxue had made after the incident with Liao Yang. After all, her current strength was too low. If she was constantly targeted by others, it would bring her trouble. However, even though she was dressed in men's clothing, she was still so handsome that no one dared to look at her directly. Miss, I heard that the Full Moon restaurant is the best inn in Plentiful City, but it's not located on the most prosperous street in the city. Grape told Lung Ruoxue the news he had just heard. Well, since we know the address, let's go there directly. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Miss, over there. Grape pointed to a road on the left. After the three of them found the Moonview restaurant, Zui's confidant, who was hiding in the dark, immediately recognized her. Miss Lung. After the guard appeared, he greeted her softly. You've got the wrong person, Master Lung. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Master Lung. The guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and quickly changed his words. Be good. Are you all here to protect that alchemist from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Lung Ruoxue raised her head and asked with a smile. No. The guard sighed lightly, his face was full of helplessness. Actually, his heart was clear. This young lady who disguised herself as Master Lung, what she wanted to say was obviously to monitor. You guys should know which room he's staying in, right? Lung Ruoxue held back her laughter and asked. He's staying in VIP room number 1 on the 3rd floor. The guard said in a low voice. Thank you, I'll go find him. Lung Ruoxue asked the alchemist's room and brought the grapes and lotus seeds into the Full Moon restaurant. Do you guys want to eat or stay? When the waiter saw Lung Ruoxue and the other two, he immediately came forward to welcome them. With a single glance, he was even more shocked. The young master in the lead was really beautiful. Although the word beautiful should not be used to describe a man, he really could not find any other words. Let's eat. Lung Ruoxue said directly. The three of you, please follow me to the 2nd floor. The waiter smiled and brought Lung Ruoxue to the dining room on the 2nd floor. After Lung Ruoxue had ordered her food, he immediately turned around and went to prepare. As it wasn't mealtime, there weren't many people in the restaurant. There were only 2 or 3 tables scattered around, so the restaurant could be said to be very quiet. Miss, aren't we here to see that pill master? Why are you eating here? Grape asked with a face full of question marks. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.